Morning, everyone, and welcome to this session of the Montgomery County Council. This morning we have 3 proclamations to present. We are going to kick it off with a proclamation recognizing Senior Citizens Day. That will be with Councilmember Mink, myself, and Councilmember Sales. And we have Councilmember Mink virtual, and Councilmember Sales will be joining us in a moment. But anyone who is here for the Senior Citizen Day proclamation, please make your way down. All right, well, I will kick us off, and we are just so glad to have everyone here with us today to celebrate Senior Citizens Day. I want to thank our leaders who are here, and I'm going to, actually, we're going to kick it off, and I'm just going to hold the mic and go around, and folks can quickly introduce yourselves.
Elwood Gray.
David Engel.
And you can say who you're with.
I'm a minute back.
You're here. You're yourself. You are representing yourself, David.
David Engel with the Commission on Aging.
Great. Thank you, David.
Dan Wilhelm with Riderwood.
Sandy Morse, Riderwood.
Adrian Clutter, Recreation.
Patrice McGee, HHS.
Brunel DeWitty, Commission on Aging, and the Tamarack Triangle Village.
Eric Friedman, Office of Consumer Protection.
Good morning. James Bridges, the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services.
Scott Bruton, Director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have such an incredible community here in Montgomery County, people coming together from across different government agencies, as well as our nonprofits and others who make our lives so wonderful here in Montgomery County. I want to recognize and say, you know, by 2030, residents 60 and over will make up 25% of the county's population, and I will be one of them at that time. And so I'm really excited. All of you are doing the work you're doing. And we're expected to continue to grow up to 35% by 2040. And one of the statistics, in all the statistics that we look at, I like to look at is that more than 30% of households have one or more person age 65 in their household. And I want to say, you know, that growing up, I lived in a multi-generational household, and when I first moved to Montgomery County and thought about where I would live, I said to my husband, we need to live near your parents. And he was like, why do you want to live near my parents? And I said, because I grew up in a multi-generational household. I grew up with grandparents, aunts, and uncles nearby. And having that for our children one day and making sure that as your parents age and we age, we're in a community together and can easily share our lives was so important. And it has been wonderful because here in Montgomery County, we support that and we support each other and the ability to age in place or go to wonderful communities like Riderwood, Leisure World, and other places. And so I'm just thrilled we're here today, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Mink now.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Seniors are such a vital part of our lives and community, and I'm not just saying that because 2 of my constituents are my senior parents who are watching today, and then we also have Dan Wilhelm and Sandy Morse from Riderwood District 5 joining us. Thank you so much. Riderwood, I have to say, when I visited Riderwood with Dan and Sandy, I was blown away by how conscientiously active, socially active, physically active that community is. And that's just one example of the kind of community building that is happening within our senior communities and across our villages as well. And thank you so much to Dr. Brunel DeWitty from the Tamarack Triangle Village, one of our villages whose leaders are doing really great work building community among seniors across East County. Our seniors are really foundational for carrying forward both our cultural diversity in so many different ways, and our community building. And I thank you all so much for being here today. Back to you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Mink. And now we'll hear from Dr. McGee and the wonderful work that she's doing in our HHS department.
Good morning, everyone. I am Patrice McGee, and I serve as the Chief of Aging and Disability Services in Montgomery County's Integrated Department of Health and Human Services. So what a joy to be here and stand before you today to recognize National Senior Citizens Day. Such a great day, right? And so some of the stats that were already read, by 2040, this county is going to be greater than 50% older adults. So the Older Americans Act defines an older adult as age 60 and older, but we have programs that serve younger seniors here in the county as well. So we believe aging is a lifespan. So this proclamation affirms what we already knew, and that is that older adults are the heartbeat of our community. Right? They carry forth our history, they enrich our present, and they help us guide into the future. So, one of the things I do want to acknowledge is that this year marks the 10th anniversary of our age-friendly initiative here in Montgomery County. So Montgomery County intentionally ensures that every aspect of this community is inclusive and accessible as we age. And so I want to celebrate the collective achievements in advancing our age-friendly strategies to make Montgomery County a community for a lifetime where we can all age well together. And so Aging and Disability Services cannot do this work alone. We depend heavily on key partnerships such as the Department of Recreation. Acting Director Adrienne Clutter has been a dynamic partner of Aging and Disability Services. Recreation houses two key programs for aging and disability services. The Senior Nutrition Program, where seniors can go get a nutritious meal and be among their peers to socially engage, as well as our health and wellness programs, a very popular program called Bone Builders, where individuals can participate, again, socially engage, and work on improving their bone density. So a very popular program. It's offered in a hybrid model, online and in person. And so to the seniors, I just want to thank you for your wisdom, your contribution to our community, and your resilience. And to our partners, staff, shout out to the staff at Aging and Disability Services. They are dynamic. And our advocates, such as the Commission on Aging, who stands with me here today. Thank you for helping build a stronger, more inclusive community for all. And happy National Senior Citizens Day.
Thank you so much, Dr. McGee. And I also have to say, like many folks in our Department of Health and Human Services and our Department of Housing and Community Affairs, Dr. McGee is out and about all over the place. And when we have community meetings, particularly in some of our senior living places, having her come and talk about all the great programs we have has been incredibly helpful. So thank you for taking your time and many evenings to do that. And speaking of the amazing programs we have here in Montgomery County, we have such a robust recreation department, and the programming we have for our 55 and older and our seniors is really incredible. Another just personal story is when my husband turned 55 a couple of years ago, he's like, I can get the senior discount now at the Aquatic Center in downtown Silver Spring. So he was very excited. So now we are going to hear from Acting Director of our Recreation Department, Adrienne Clutter.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here representing senior centers and senior programs in Montgomery County. And there was a distinguished professor I love, John Crompton from Texas A&M University. He said, if you're no longer defining yourself by what you do in your profession, you're typically defining yourself by what you do in your leisure time. And so I just want to thank everybody, our staff, our community, Health and Human Services, all of our wonderful partners for helping us to continue to create those defining moments for folks as they grow into adulthood. We have so much talent here in Montgomery County in our senior community. We love for you to come and have the opportunity to share, to give back, to make the social connections. I'd like to thank, again, Dr. McGee and Health and Human Services. And I'd like to say, come join us, because without you, there is no us. So thank you. And on another note, I must give a quick, brief update. Maryland has over 300 seniors who've qualified for National Senior Olympics who are participating in Iowa right now. 80% of the Maryland athletes are from Montgomery County. Yes. We're holding 8th in the medal count, and we're on the rise. So again, come out, join us. We'd love to have you, and thank you for all of our seniors in Montgomery County, because again, without you, there is no us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the medal update on that. And again, we have our Commission on Aging and our Office of Consumer Protection, and really just such a robust, interconnected web of folks here to support and help our seniors. And I just want to say thank you to everyone. So I'm going to read the proclamation now. So this is the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, whereas National Senior Citizens Day is an annual observance celebrating and recognizing the contributions of our older neighbors in building our country, and whereas more than 180,000 seniors call Montgomery County home and comprise approximately 18% of our population, up from 6% in 1970, and whereas National Senior Citizens Day presents an opportunity to raise awareness for some of the most significant issues facing seniors, such as affordable housing, healthcare costs, elder fraud, physical aging, physical assistance, technology advancement, financial security, and loneliness. And whereas senior homelessness is increasing in Montgomery County, as 6.4% of seniors ages 65 and older live below the federal poverty line, and whereas Montgomery County is committed to retrofitting, producing, and preserving accessible and affordable housing for our senior citizens through housing-related programs such as the Home Accessibility Rehabilitation Program, HARP, home sharing, rebuilding together, design for life property tax incentives, and the rental assistance program. And whereas Montgomery County will further address the problems facing our senior community through partnerships with the Maryland Department of Aging, Montgomery County Aging and Disability Services, Montgomery County Commission on Aging, and the countless nonprofits in our community focused on improving the quality of life for our seniors. And Councilmember Sales, why don't you take it home? Yeah.
Yeah, I have it here. And whereas Montgomery County recognizes the importance of ensuring our seniors can age in place with grace, and that these are family, friends, and neighbors who serve as mentors and role models to our younger generations, share their wisdom and life lessons, and help foster a diverse and welcoming community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby recognizes National Senior Citizens Day as a significant occasion to advocate for, protect, uplift, and celebrate seniors in our community. Presented on this 29th day of July in the year 2025 by Council President Kate Stewart, Councilmember Mink, and Councilmember Sales. Thank you. Yes, as the daughter of the sandwich generation, I am so honored to still have my parents. And when I served on the Gaithersburg City Council, I was the youngest member assigned to the Senior Advisory Committee. So from yoga to mindfulness activities, it's always an honor to meet with our residents, to learn from our residents, bridge the digital divide with our residents, and connect them with the next generation. We have so much to learn. And with Maryland being the fastest growing state for seniors in our community, they are our priority. And so here with our Senior Advisory Committee, our active aging community, our villages, regardless of it was during the pandemic or now, we have to value our seniors and ensure that they can age in place here in Montgomery County. So honored to celebrate them this year and every year moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sales. And now we'll take our picture. All right, thank you, everyone. The next proclamation we have is recognizing Parks and Recreation Month by the Montgomery County Council Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee.
All right, we got the hugs going on over here. We are very excited to celebrate two of our amazing departments that really are at the center of quality of life. We were just talking about the vibrancy of our older adult population in Montgomery County. And if we talk about how the county supports and uplifts our older adult population, our youngest community members, and everybody in between, I can't think of two organizations, two departments in county government that do more to support everybody across the age spectrum of all abilities and all backgrounds than our Parks Department and our Recreation Department. 37,000 acres of parkland. We are so fortunate to have over 111, I believe 111, am I right, historic structures we currently have in the Parks Department, which enrich our history. We are growing our number of parks structures and properties to activate them for better use for our community members. And our Department of Recreation just got off of its Super Bowl, is in the midst of its camps. But the 4th of July, I know, is the busiest day for Adrian and team. And Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez and I were together at the final of our two huge celebration that brought tens of thousands of people to Germantown and tens of thousands of people to Wheaton to be able to experience community, celebrate country together at a time when we really need it. And each and every day, the programming and the activities and the inclusiveness that these two departments provide to us is so critical and so important as part of our quality of life. So I am thrilled to be here with the former vice chair of the Park and Planning Board that oversees the Parks Department and the former director of the Rec Department that I have the great fortune of serving on the County Council with, as well as several of our leaders, our Director of Parks, our Acting Director of the Recreation Department, our Parks Foundation, and so many others. So we're going to go around and we're going to introduce ourselves. Then I'm going to turn it over to colleagues and to the directors to speak, and then we're going to present the proclamation. So let me start with our director.
Mitty Figueredo, Montgomery Parks Director.
Katie Richter, Executive Director of the Montgomery Parks Foundation.
Gary Burnett, Deputy Director for Montgomery Parks.
Darren Flachet, Deputy Director of Administration for Montgomery Parks.
Adrian Clutter, Acting Director, Recreation.
Trish Heffelfinger, President of the Montgomery Parks Foundation.
Hi, my name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. I'm a council member here in Montgomery County, and I have a great pleasure of doing this proclamation with the chair of the PHP committee and my good friend, Gabe Albornoz. I had to say, I had another meeting last night. That's my life. And we were going around, and people were complaining about things, as always. But then they were saying, and then I asked, why do you live in Montgomery County? Why do you love it so much? And the first thing they said, because of parks, because of the rec department. I can have classes for free in the rec department. I can go and use the trails. I can bike. And then I said, you see, there's so many beautiful things. We're going to disagree in some things, but in most of the things that we can talk about today in this meeting, I am sure that we're going to agree on. And that's how I kicked off my meeting. And it was awesome at the end. So thank you for all your work, because you make me look so good. My friend, Gabe Albornoz.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Well, good morning, good people. It is great to be with all of you today. This is my 18th 18th proclamation for Parks and Recreation Month that I've had the opportunity to participate in from different angles. I think I could wallpaper a room in my house with the amount of proclamations that I've had the opportunity to present and receive all these years. But I look forward to this every year because I had a front row seat for so long to see the dedication and commitment that our Parks and Recreation professionals provide every day on behalf of all of our residents. And it's been noted many times, but when there are resident surveys of the services that county residents appreciate most, Parks and Recreation is always at the top of the list. And as we heard the impassioned testimony from everyone this year during our budget process, and we hear every year, some of the most impassioned testimony are people advocating on behalf of Parks and Recreation, talking about how both agencies have improved their quality of life, provided respite, provided a safe place for their children to go after school and in the summers. And the mentorship that occurs every day is truly extraordinary. These are two of the best agencies in the entire country, and we are fortunate to have them here now. And as I conclude my remarks today, I'll just say this. Tough times are ahead financially for our county and our country. We're going to have some tough budgets moving forward, but we have to do everything that we can to hold the line in ensuring that we continue the outstanding services of these agencies because they provide health and wellness and so many important services that are important to so many of all of us. I want to thank these outstanding leaders for being here today and look forward to supporting them for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And speaking of directors, we're going to now turn it over to our director, starting with our Parks Director, Ms. Figueredo.
Thank you, Council Member. So this is high season for us in parks. Right now, we're here in this nice air-conditioned room, and out there we've got folks who are lining fields and cutting grass. They're building trails. They're repairing playgrounds. They're running programs for seniors. They are running all of their camps. They are awash in children. They are, testing our water quality and making sure that we are taking good care of our natural resources. They're hard at work out there in the sweaty world. So we're happy to be here. I'm here with my two deputy directors, Gary Burnett and Darren Flouché. We're happy to be here to accept this recognition on their behalf. I also want to mention that the Parks Foundation is here. The chair of the Parks Foundation Board, Trish Heffelfinger, and the executive director, Katie Richter. They are such an important source of support for the Parks Department as well. And I never want to forget that we do this all for the residents of Montgomery County, but we also can't do it without them. So we are so grateful for the support we receive and really for the opportunity to provide the service that we provide because it brings us so much joy. Parks are here to make people healthy and happy, to bring people together, and, goodness knows we need that more than ever. So again, thank you for this recognition.
Thank you, and thank you to the teams who are out there in the heat taking care of our 424 parks as we speak. We really do sincerely appreciate it. Now we're going to turn it over to the Recreation Department with Director Adrian Clutter. And I'll just note the Recreation Department, not only does it provide amazing programming, as Councilmember Albornoz will attest, it's also one of the most important youth job and young people job initiatives that we have in the county as well, which plays a critical role in providing job opportunities for our young people. So with that, let me turn it over to you, Director.
Thank you so much. I tell everyone, if you've ever seen the TV show Parks and Recreation, that I'm the original Leslie Knope, so equally as passionate about what we do. And that's a really great segue. I'm driving down Georgia Avenue yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I see the signature red seasonal staff shirt. It's got the recreation logo on the front, says staff really big on the back, and I do often see staff on their way to work at bus stops. So I did a U-turn on Georgia Avenue all the way up by 28, kind of near between Olney near Route 28, and I yell at the bus stop for the young person to jump in the car real quick. I'm surprised he got in the car with the stranger, but luckily I was in a government vehicle. And who knew that he would be getting a ride to work that day? So he jumps in, and I'm like, where are you going? And I was surprised. He was traveling all the way to Eastern Middle School to a teen camp. And it really grounded me. and reminded me, so we have a young person who's taking multiple buses to get to work every day to serve our community. So I want to take this opportunity to not only thank our partners, our friends groups, I think Friends of Potomac is here, and our boards and our commissions and committees, but our staff and the more than 2,500 seasonal staff that we have out there. Our pools have hit capacity multiple times this summer. We have more than 6,000 young people in camp, serving over 50,000 back-to-back 4th of July events, and I'm so honored to be the leader of such an incredible team. And I want to thank the council and thank the county executive for your support. We can't do it without you, and it is an incredible honor. And again, thank you to our staff who work every day to change lives in the hot, in the heat, in the changing weather, in the evenings, on the weekends, and on the holidays, so we can create a better community for Montgomery County. Thank you.
Well, great. We are now going to read the proclamation with colleagues. Whereas Montgomery Parks and Montgomery County Recreation play an essential role in enhancing quality of life for all residents by providing safe, inclusive, and engaging programs in public spaces that promote health, strengthen communities, and protect the natural and cultural assets of Montgomery County. And
whereas Montgomery Parks offers a broad range of programs for all ages and abilities, including adaptive recreation, outdoor exploration for youth and older adults, environmental education, and volunteer opportunities that connect people to nature and to each other. And
whereas the county's award-winning park system spans more than 37,000 acres and includes trails, gardens, historic sites, playgrounds, sports fields, and community events that continue to serve as vital gathering places for residents across every neighborhood. And
whereas Montgomery County Recreation delivers year-round services that foster connection, personal growth, and well-being through summer camps, after-school programs, aquatics, fitness classes, and social activities for youth, families, and older adults. And
whereas initiatives such as Rec Fit provide free access to fitness rooms, game areas, and open gym time, helping remove barriers to participation and ensuring residents have the opportunity to lead active and healthy lives. And
whereas the county's network of recreation and senior centers are trusted neighborhood hubs that reflect the diversity of our population and are supported by a dedicated team of professionals committed to building stronger and more inclusive communities. And take us home.
whereas the combined efforts of Montgomery Parks and Montgomery County Recreation advance county goals by promoting active lifestyles, environmental stewardship, historical awareness, and equitable access to high-quality programs and public spaces. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, Councilmember Albornoz, and the entire County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, hereby celebrate National Park and Recreation Month. And be it further resolved that the County Council encourages all residents to explore and enjoy the outstanding parks, trails, pools, recreation centers, programs, and events that enrich our communities and bring us all together at a time when we surely need it. Presented on this 29th day of July in the year 2025 by the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, Council President Stewart, and the entire Montgomery County Council.
All right, well, thank you all. Our next proclamation is recognizing Open Housing Day, and that is myself with the county executive. everyone who's here for our Open Housing Day proclamation. Come on down. Yeah, everybody, come on. All right, as everyone's coming down, I will kick us off and say we are here today to commemorate Fair Open Housing Day in Montgomery County. Today, we are recognizing the 1967 passage of the county's open housing law to eliminate discriminatory housing practices and promote equal access to housing opportunities. This commemoration reaffirms our commitment here in Montgomery County to diversity, equity, and inclusion at a time when our federal administration is pushing for the removal and the rollback of equity initiatives. We've taken steps here, and you'll hear from our county executive in a moment and Director Stowe, but all across our county government through our Department of Housing and Community Affairs, HHS, and I just want to do a special shout out to our Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs, our code enforcement, and everyone who works to ensure that people have housing, that they have safe housing, they have stable housing here in Montgomery County. And as a county council and a county government, this is one of our top priorities that we all work on day in and day out. And we couldn't do it without great partners like the Renters Alliance, who is also here, and many other people who really make this possible here in Montgomery County. And I also want to thank, we have representatives from the Capital Area Association of Realtors who are with us today, and also the Montgomery County NAACP, because this is really ensuring fair and equal access to housing is something we all need to be working on here in Montgomery County. And I will turn it over to the county executive.
Thank you. Also very happy to be here today. Just want to start with a little history lesson about Montgomery County, and that's to remind people that after the Civil War, Montgomery County had a population of black people that exceeded about 30% of the population. By the time you get to 1960, it had shrunk to a little more than 3% out of the county's population. It didn't shrink because other people outgrew it. It shrunk because black families in Montgomery County lived primarily in agricultural areas because there were no cities or urban areas in Montgomery County. Very shortly after the Civil War, since ownership was not an issue for black people before the Civil War, very quickly after the Civil War, almost all the property in Montgomery County became encumbered by covenants that restricted the sale or renting of land to white people, to black people throughout the county. And the effect of that was these small families who got, like Scotland, got their homesteads after the Civil War without the ability to buy additional land. When you have children, you can only divide your farm into so many pieces before the pieces are no longer economically viable. And so people had to send their children out of Montgomery County in order to find livelihood someplace else, because you couldn't work in Montgomery County and you couldn't live in Montgomery County unless you already had land here. And that's a sad commentary on the county, but it's kind of the backstory about why the Fair Housing Act was so very important. And doing this in 1967, 68, and fighting that out in that time period was very important. Another tidbit of this is this effort actually led to Spiro Agnew being governor of Maryland, because the Democrats ran a raving white racist, George P. Mahoney, whose slogan was, "Your home is your castle." That was the Democratic candidate for governor, and many Democrats wound up voting for Spiro Agnew, who had his own horrible legacy to come after that. But little did we know, or did my parents know and others, what was going to come of that. But that's sort of like two little side stories that are really entwined with the fair housing fight, and it tells you how broad the fight was, because this was a guy running for statewide office who thought fighting against fair housing was the thing to do that would be politically popular. So that's the setting for all this. And just to acknowledge all the folks, particularly the folks out of the NAACP who led this fight. They wanted to move into the same neighborhoods that everybody else, the single-family neighborhoods that grew up in Montgomery County after 1960 were places where lots of people wanted to come and live. And the barriers to being able to live in those neighborhoods were really severe, and they really did keep people out of the county. They were the barrier. The racist covenants in this county were the thing that kept people from moving into the neighborhoods they wanted to move into. So that's the sort of backstory to all this work. And I just, want to echo what Kate said, is that this is really important to all of us. This is the only way this county can grow in an inclusive way. If we don't have fair housing, if people don't have the opportunity to live where they want to live, if they can afford it, they should be able to live there. They shouldn't have to face discrimination. Owners shouldn't be able to refuse to sell. Real estate agents have come a long way since 1967. They're no longer steering people. The banks seem to have gotten over redlining for the most part. So the things have come into play that are all necessary components of making sure you've got a housing market that everybody can take advantage of and everybody can participate in. So I just want to acknowledge the work. I'm not going to read all the prepared stuff, but I just wanted to focus on that because I think some history about why this was so important for the black community is really important. Without fair housing, that community would have continued to dwindle and disappear from this county. And the fact that we reversed that is, I think, says a lot about the leadership back then and the courage they had to get this through the council back then. So thank you.
Thank you to the county executive. And now we'll hear from Director Stowe of our Human Rights Commission.
Good morning. Good morning. Is everybody out there? Everybody out there? Yes. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. What a great joy and great delight to celebrate this day because it represents, as our county executive has said so eloquently, not only the birthing of a movement and the leadership of those who existed then. I'm here to say that a continuation of that particular piece is going on today as well. I'm so pleased to have behind me, and Madam President, if we could get a chance maybe to have them introduce themselves, I appreciate that as well because they were able to get up and be a part of this morning with us. But housing is not only necessary. Housing is not just what we need by virtue of us needing shelter. Housing is essential for the livelihood of every human being in our county. That's how important it is. I come this morning also to share that the focus of those persons back in 1967, folks, in 1967, there was no federal law on fair housing in the country. Your county, my county, was the first county who came on board with a fair housing. That day it was called open housing law back in 1967. There was not a federal law until 1968. Now, folks had a problem with our 1967 law. At that time, we did not have a county executive. At that point in time, I had a county manager, but not a county executive. It was run by county council. And they decided then to repeal that record-breaking kind of legislation. And so it went away. But these women, and one of them is standing behind me right now, these women, Jackie Simon, continued to fight and brought back that law, the open housing law in Montgomery County, a month or two later after, in May of 1968. So we ought to be proud of the fact that there was leadership. And at that time, the law in Montgomery County was the most comprehensive in the United States of America, right here in Montgomery County. And so I think that deserves a round of applause. Don't you think so? So it's already been said, well, I won't continue anymore, but it's simply just to say this. I remember a phrase on the back a lot of some Hollywood movie. And I think the phrase President Stewart was by this little girl that was no place like home. But it could be more true today than it was then in the making of that film. There is no place like home. We want to make sure that in Montgomery County, all of my partners are in line with this as well, that in Montgomery County, whether you live in Poolsville, whether you live then in Burtonsville, whether right here in Rockville, whether you're in Silver Spring, or whether you're in Gaithersburg, or whether you're in Damascus, whether you're in any other part of our county, that you truly are a part of an opportunity to gain a house, to gain a home, to gain an apartment, so then that you can say, there's no place like home in Montgomery County. Thank you all again to our council for all the legislation that has reinforced what we're doing. And let me just say real quickly that if you are in an interview, therefore a housing rental opportunity, or you're a real estate agent, and something does not sound right with what's going on in that conversation, call our office, call one of our partners, and ask the question, is this legal? Is this right? And make that, again, something that you do first and foremost before you accept whatever decision you've been given. If you've been asked about your criminal record, can't do that in your initial interview, seeking housing, come to our office. Let us know what's going on as well, as far as that's concerned. If you're a real estate agent, seems to only show you certain parts of town, that's a problem. Call us, call our partners, and let us know what's going on. We can make Montgomery County the best place to not only to work, but more importantly, to live in America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Stowe, and let's hear from some of those partners if you want to just say your name and affiliation.
Carolyn Burns with the Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors, GCAR.
Tim Huang, Renters Alliance.
Matt Losak, co-founder, executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance.
Emily Towie, Renters Alliance.
Scott Bruton, director of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs.
Jackie Simon, one of those who was in the county in the 1960s and working hard.
Janice Freeman, J.M. Freeman Enterprise Real Estate Brokerage, and I am a Human Rights Commissioner.
Nicole Catravanos, Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs at DHCA.
Jackie Machinia, Renters Alliance.
Morning, Malek Demir, Renters Alliance.
Simeon Deskins, a realtor at Keller Williams, and also a member of GMAR Realists, which was a black organization because we weren't allowed to be realtors.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here and doing your part. And Jackie, thank you for being here as in particular this morning. And to Director Stowe, thank you for sharing the history with us. County Executive, you want to read the proclamation? All right, we can kick it off. Need my glasses. Whereas on January 30th, 1967, the Human Rights Commission voted to submit draft fair housing legislation to the Montgomery County Council, and
whereas the Montgomery County Council passed the open housing law on July 20th, 1967, nearly a full year before President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Federal Fair Housing Act into law on April 11th, 1968, and
whereas the open housing law prohibited discrimination in the sale or rental of virtually all housing except for owner-occupied housing with 2 or fewer rented units, despite being challenged and deemed invalid by the courts in December 1967, efforts to rewrite and draft a new law began immediately, resulting in a new, broader, and more encompassing law passed on May 30th, 1968, which federal officials called the most comprehensive fair housing measure in the United States, and
whereas Montgomery County Office of Human Rights enforces the current fair housing law prohibiting discrimination in both residential and commercial real estate on the basis of race, color, religious creed, ancestry, national origin, sex, marital status, physical or mental disability, presence of children, sexual orientation, age, source of income, criminal record, and gender identity, to ensure that all participants in real estate transactions are treated in a consistent and fair manner to ensure equal access to housing opportunities. And Madam President.
All right. Thanks. Whereas housing is fundamental to the well-being and stability of all our residents and has once again become too elusive and out of reach for far too many. And now therefore be it resolved that the County Executive, Mark Elridge, and the entire Montgomery County Council of Maryland do hereby proclaim July 20th, 2025 as Fair Open Housing Day in Montgomery County, and we encourage all to reaffirm their commitment to fair and equitable access to housing and unreservedly fight for opportunities for all persons to rent, lease, sell, or buy any property in Montgomery County, presented on this day, the 29th of July in the year 2025 by myself and the County Executive, Mark Elridge. Thank you, everyone. All right, thank you again to everyone who joined us for all of our proclamations this morning. We're going to move on to general business, and I just want to announce that Councilmember Mink and Councilmember Jawando are on virtually, and I will turn it now to the clerk to share today's announcements.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning. The Council will hold 2 public hearings on the University Boulevard Corridor Plan. Excuse me. The first will be held on Wednesday, September 10th, 2025 at 7:00 p.m. at Montgomery Blair High School in the auditorium, 51 University Boulevard East, Silver Spring, Maryland, 20901. The second public hearing will be held on Tuesday, September 16th, 2025 at 7:00 p.m. here at the Council Office Building. Those wishing to provide testimony must register in advance beginning at 9:00 a.m. on August 1st, 2025 via the Council's website, or by calling 240-777-7803. More information can be found on the Council's website. Additionally, the Council is seeking applicants to serve on the Human Trafficking Prevention Committee. Applications for the vacancy are due by 5:00 p.m. on Monday, August 25th, 2025. Cover letters and resumes can be submitted by email to council.clerk@montgomerycountymd.gov. More information is available on the County Council's website. There are a few updates to today's agenda. The first is a change in the order of agenda items. Item 3, action on the Master Plan on Highways and Transitways 2025 technical update, will be taken up by the Council as the second item on today's agenda. Item 2, the Summer Fellows presentation, will take place after item 3. Finally, a proposed closed session has been added to the agenda at 12:00 p.m. in the 3rd floor Council Conference Room. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the clerk. The minutes from the July 8th, 2025 council session have been circulated to colleagues for review. Are there any objections to approving these minutes? Seeing none, these minutes stand approved. Now, as the clerk just announced, we will now take up item 3 and then go back to agenda item 2. The council will now sit as the district council for action on the master plan on highways and transitways 2025 technical update. The Transportation and Environment Committee met and discussed and approved amendments, and I will turn it over now to Chair Glass to provide the committee's recommendations.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The Transportation and Environment Committee met on July 21st and had a robust discussion about the master plan of highways and transitways. This plan serves as a comprehensive inventory of significant existing and planned roadways and transitways across Montgomery County. This is a technical update to the master plan of highways and transitways that's needed in order to reflect the council's approval of 2 laws recently that include the Complete Streets Design Guide and the Streets and Roads Classification Law. While most of the changes were technical in nature, this plan also proposes the removal of the northern section of the Mid-County Highway Extended, otherwise known as M83, which is a long-standing, unbuilt project that has been subject to decades of debate and detailed study. The committee reviewed and made other recommendations for the council, and I'll just tick through a number of those changes that were made. The committee unanimously recommended concurring with the planning board's recommendations to remove segments of DuPont Avenue, Elton Road, Rosedale Road, and Walsh Street. That was unanimous. The committee also recommended concurring with the planning board's recommendation regarding the removal of the northern section of M83. That was a 2-to-1 vote with Councilmember Balcom dissenting. The committee unanimously recommended adding a feasibility and timeline of implemented planning and existed master planning transportation improvements to the scope of the recommended study regarding the transportation capacity and the needs from Clarksburg to Germantown. The committee unanimously recommended reclassifying segments of the Cabin John Parkway, the Clara Barton Parkway, the Josiah Henson Parkway, and Montrose Parkway, pending review by MCDOT. That was unanimous. And then Councilmember Balcom in this packet also has another recommendation, which I will let her bring to the council, but it was a part of the conversation that when the committee removed M83, it also sparked other conversations about what is in the master plan and how what is in the master plan relates to other planning decisions by the planning department and planning board. I'll hold my personal comments for the full council conversation, but that is a committee report.
Thank you, Chair Glass. Councilmember Balcom, if it's okay with you, I'll have Mr. Kenny walk through the packet, and then when we get to your amendment, we'll deal with that. Mr. Kenny, do you want to walk through the packet?
Thank you. We do have a short presentation from planning staff walking through the scope of the plan, if that would be helpful for the council to understand each of the tasks. Then happy to walk through the recommendations of the committee.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. For the record, my name is Sophia Aldrich with the Montgomery Planning Department, Transportation Planning Division. I'm the project manager for this project master plan. Today we have a brief presentation that will, to summarize the intent of the master plan and project tasks that guided our efforts. Next slide. First, the full incorporation of the Complete Streets design philosophy is now, with this master plan, embedded in it, fully adopting Complete Streets design guide, street types and area types. This graphic, which originally came from the Complete Streets design guide, really shows how street classification today considers both the road function and the surrounding land use context when determining master plan transportation recommendations. So just as an example, a downtown street, which is one of our street types, is located in the downtown area, which is the denser parts of Montgomery County. And in the old road code, that was typically classified as an urban area. And a downtown street is a street that provides a local function within the downtown area. So, by classifying in both of these ways, we're really contextualizing the recommendations that we make more effectively. Next slide. A second important concept from Complete Streets is target speed. Target speed is really a long-term vision of where we would like to see typical travel speeds reach to help make all streets safer and usable by all travel modes. And this was, the target speeds that are in the master plan of highways were actually established in the Complete Streets Design Guide, which drew a lot from national research on target speeds, which is a fairly new concept. Next slide, please. Task 3 involved the development of new tools that will ultimately be added to the master plan of highways and transitways by creating a new street type, the growth corridor boulevard, as a tool to be added to the Complete Streets Design Guideline and at Chapter 49, supporting the recommendations of Thrive 2050 for growth corridors with this creation of this new street type. The growth corridor boulevard street type is applicable to areas planned for moderate and high density only, and this master plan does not designate growth corridor the street type. The council will ultimately decide where to apply growth corridor boulevards and boulevards in future master plans. Next slide. The fourth concept introduced in this technical update is really just a cleanup exercise to ensure that transit master plan recommendations are consistent with ongoing MCDOT transit planning and design. And I think that's it for that one. The last task really rose out of significant testimony that occurred initially at the first public hearing, and also public comments submitted by the county executive and the Montgomery County Department of Transportation with a request to remove the unbuilt sections of Mid-County Highway Extended, also known as M83, from the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways. This effort was added to the scope of work by the Planning Board and extended the time that we brought this project in front of you today by several months. And we had 2 additional public hearings, 2 additional outreach meetings in person, and one of our public hearings we held in Germantown, which we haven't done that in a long time, and it was, I think, a very important part of really trying to get public feedback from all sides. And that is my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aldridge. Mr. Kenny, do you want to take us through the packet?
Yes, thank you. So with that understanding of the scope of work of the this 2025 technical update to the Master Plan on Highways and Transitways, we can start going through the committee recommendations, so split out by Planning Board recommendations as they appear in the plan. So starting with recommendation 5.A, the removal of street segments. As Chair Glass mentioned, the committee unanimously concurred with the Planning Board, recommended concurring with the Planning Board to remove small segments of DuPont Avenue in Kensington, Elton Road in Hillendale, Rosedale Avenue in Bethesda, and Walsh Street in Chevy Chase. These are not material segments, but rather reflect that these sort of the reclassifications of area types and downtown boundaries in previous plans. So this is a technical change. The committee recommended 2-1 with Councilmember Balcom dissenting to concur with the Planning Board recommendation to, in addition to those roads, remove the northern section of M83 from the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways. There is also included in the text of the plan a recommendation to retain the southern segment of extending Mid-County Highway Extended to the intercounty to the ICC 27 Maryland 200. That to keep that segment was approved, recommended for approval by the committee. This and finally, 5.A recommendation included to expand the scope of, or to conduct a comprehensive study of travel needs from the Clarksburg to Germantown corridor. The committee recommended expanding the scope of that study to include the feasibility and timeline of implementing planned and existing master plan transportation improvements. So rather than just studying the travel needs of the corridor, evaluating an implementation timeline of improvements already planned. That language is reflected on the top of page 4 of the staff report, as well as in the draft resolution that incorporates the committee's recommendations in the underlined text. Since the committee work session, planning staff have raised the possibility of expanding the scope of this study to include the corridor to be all the way to Montgomery Village, which would be the full extent of the planned Mid-County Highway extended, so to study its entire corridor, as well as to expand the study to be existing and future travel demand, rather than just future travel demand. So the underlined language on the top of page 4 of the staff report is the committee recommendation, and the double underlined language added to it below that on page 4 of the staff report is planning staff and council staff recommendation to be added.
Yeah, Councilmember Malcolm.
So yes, I'd like to make a motion that we change that the study language. It makes sense. It covers the same area that M83 would have covered. And then we'll also have a transportation review with the Germantown Master Plan and the Clarksburg Gateway Master Plan. So this makes sense. I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, Councilmember Friedson, second. Any questions? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand.
Yes.
Okay, and that is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Kenny, we can continue.
Thank you. So that concludes the review of recommendation 5A. If you'd like to address that or move on to the other recommendations.
Not seeing anyone asking a question, so we can move on.
Thank you. So recommendation 5B covers the bulk of the just the text of the master plan, as well as largely the mandate to adopt or implement the Complete Streets Design Guide and the county's new road classifications from the various legislation that the council has passed in the past few years. So on pages 24 through 114 of the plan, you'll see the over 900 street segments that are recommended for new or adjusted target speeds, as was addressed in planning staff's presentation, as well as some lane removals or changes, as was recommended in previous master plans. The only one of these changes that doesn't precipitate from a previous plan or policy adopted by the council are the reduction of lane widths on Wisteria Drive and Waring Station Road in Germantown. These currently have 2 lanes. They're planned for 4 lanes. Planning staff made this recommendation in consultation with MCDOT, as the current lanes are serving their purpose, and there's not right-of-way to expand to 4. Changes to these roads are listed in detail on pages 26 and 27 of the plan. So those are the recommendations of the planning board. Prior to the committee work session, planning staff reached out to council staff regarding possible changes to several parkways in the master plan of highways and transitways. The 2018 technical update to this master plan removed several parkways from the plan, just as a matter of practice. Given that the parkways serve a slightly different purpose than what is within the scope of the MPOHT, Master Plan on Highways and Transitways. And so planning staff recommended redesignating or removing sections of Cabin John Parkway, Clara Barton Parkway, Josiah Henson Parkway, and Montrose Parkway, the planned Montrose Parkway. These changes are detailed on the bottom of page 5 of the staff report and on the adoption resolution incorporating those recommendations. The Teeny committee made a recommendation to adopt or made a recommendation to approve these changes proposed by planning staff pending a review by MCDOT. MCDOT still has some questions about segments of Josiah Henson and Montrose Parkway, but there is agreement that Parkway is not the correct designation, and that the recommendation, so Boulevard is the recommendation for classification from the committee for these two roads, and there will be future opportunities to address and reevaluate these through area master plans and future technical updates to the master plan on highways and transitways.
All right, not seeing any questions or comments, we can continue.
Great. Recommendation 5C addresses the addition or removal of transitways. There are 5 segments that are being addressed. The recommendation is to remove transitways along the Intercounty Connector, Metro Access Road in Shady Grove, and the Tuckerman Lane alternate route for the North Bethesda Transitway. These are recommendations from, as well as the additions of Castle Boulevard extension on the US 29 BRT and a transitway between Lockwood Drive and Perimeter Road in White Oak. These are recommendations from MCDOT's Bus Rapid Transit Planning, and the committee recommends concurrence with the Planning Board.
Continue.
Thank you. Recommendation 5D addresses the additional removal of transit stations along Maryland 355, US 29, and Veers Mill Road, BRT alignments. These were done, again, also in consultation with MCDOT in accordance with their planning efforts, and the committee recommends concurrence with the Planning Board.
Okay, continue.
Recommendation 5E is the creation of the Growth Corridor Boulevard street type, as was addressed in the Planning Board's recommendation. This is a move to expand the county's efforts along our growth corridors. This recommendation does not change the designation of any streets, but rather provides the Planning Board and the Council with an additional option for street classification in future master plans. And the committee recommends concurrence with the Planning Board.
Continue.
Thank you. Finally, recommendation 5F is a summary of and sort of a miscellaneous recommendation to capture 2 other additions, this being the recommendation for heavy rail for third tracking on the Mark Brunswick line between the Frederick County line and Metropolitan Grove, as well as a Metro Rail expansion of the red line between Shady Grove and Germantown Mark Station. These were recommendations of the council in previous master plans and are included in the plan as just to adopt these previously approved countywide master plans. This recommendation also includes a map of all of the transitway recommendations in the plan. There were within the review between council staff and planning staff, there were identified 3 technical errors. The committee recommended addressing those that are listed on page 8 of the staff report and included in the resolution, but otherwise concurring with the Planning Board. Thank you. And then that concludes the recommendations. I believe Councilmember Balcom has proposed one additional amendment to the adoption resolution, not to the text of the plan itself, but one stipulation into the an amendment to the adoption resolution. Happy to read it or.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Kenny. Thank you for walking through the packet. I'll turn it now to Councilmember Balcom.
Sure, thank you. So we did have a very robust discussion in committee about the addition of Red Line to Germantown and the third tracking of Mark. And I appreciate Chair Glass and President Stewart and staff. It was a full discussion. as opposed to in terms of how these should be treated. And so we agreed that we did want both the Red Line to Germantown and the third track of the Brunswick line to be included in the master plan as an aspirational goal to signal our intent to pursue both of these projects. They would be game changers in terms of transit in the Up-County, and it would be great to have both. However, once they're in the master plan of highways, the potential capacity for each of these projects would be considered in looking at evaluating capacity in master plans. As both of these projects are currently not viable at this point in time and will most likely not be implemented during the lifespan of this master plan of highways and transit, I am proposing this language on page 9. This is similar to the discussion of M83. If we know that these projects aren't going to be built anytime soon, we cannot rely on the capacity when we're approving future development. So I would like to make a motion to add this language on page 9 to the resolution.
Thank you. Councilmember Balcom moved. I have a second from Councilmember Sales. We will take up this amendment now. Councilmember Lukey, do you have a comment on this amendment?
Yes, I just want to say that I truly support this and appreciate the work that the committee did on this, because it is critical that we find a very makes sense way to deal with these things. We can't ignore the realities of the situation that's now been created by the things that have happened in the past, but we need a good pathway forward in the future, and we need to make sure that we're not relying on things that don't exist or cannot reasonably exist when we are decision making. So thank you, Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Couldn't agree more. I really want to thank both Up-County representatives, and particularly Councilmember Balcom, for her advocacy during committee and the continued work with this amendment. This is really important. I'm a supporter and believer in market expansion, of course. Would love to see the Red Line at some point expand as well. I was just at a regional leadership conference along with the council president, with the Council of Governments, where we were talking about this very issue of regional connectivity and some of the outer communities, including Frederick County, noted the challenge of a regional transportation network that sometimes doesn't feel like it includes them. We face the same challenge here in Montgomery County, where those residents up county sometimes feel like our conversations, particularly around transportation and infrastructure, don't include them, and that we make unrealistic and unfair expectations based on things that we have noted in other conversations are not going to happen or are not happening anytime soon. I think part of master plans are setting realistic expectations for the public and the private sectors, for residents and for businesses. Keeping things in the master plan or assuming things that are going to happen in the master plan as a way to make planning decisions is not fair and is not reasonable. So I just really appreciate this. I think it's important that we keep these in the master plan. They are aspirational. That is an aspect of master plans, but we erode public trust if we are being unrealistic in counting things that aren't likely to happen anytime soon and sometimes don't happen ever. And so I strongly support this. I really appreciate this. And I'll just note that the frustration of Up-County residents is palpable. It is real, and it is something that we need to take extremely seriously. We cannot move something out of a master plan without a reasonable replacement. So I am looking forward to that continued conversation. I do think that advancing studies and conversations, making sure that the infrastructure that we're talking about is actually going to serve the needs of the community, that it's a modern transportation solution, which is something that needs to happen. We shouldn't be focused on a plan from 30 years ago that may not be meeting our current needs, but we also need to make sure that it's not merely an aspirational dynamic that has no semblance of reality. that is never going to happen, and there's no expectation that it's going to happen. So if we're never going to build it, take it out of the master plan, but we shouldn't be counting things in our expectations that ultimately aren't being built and aren't going to serve the real-time needs of residents who are facing huge quality of life, huge environmental, huge family dynamic, huge connectivity challenges to get to their job. So thank you, Councilmember Balcom, and I enthusiastically support this amendment that you have put forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to also extend my appreciation to Councilmember Balcom and Council President Stewart for the very thoughtful conversation we had. The issue underlying this amendment was the very last item on the agenda. And I raised the question about comparing what we had just decided about M83 with the decisions that still remained about the red line and about Mark. And I said, we just removed M83 because it has already been removed from master plan consideration. The planning board and planning department do not consider M83 when they take up master plans and other land use decisions for that area of the county. And so I asked, why are they still considering an extension of the red line and expansion of Mark? And as Councilmember Friedson noted, a number of us, myself included, were at a Council of Government retreat over the weekend. And WMATA General Manager Randy Clark was pretty emphatic that the red line is not being extended. As much as everyone in that room wanted it to be, the reality is that it's not. What he actually focused on, just so people are aware, was better bus service and making sure that our existing bus fleets throughout the DC region are able to transport more people between Maryland, Virginia, and the district. The other aspect that was discussed was about Mark and about VRE and about regional rail. And we all recognize that that is a missed opportunity, and those are decisions ultimately to be made in Annapolis and in Richmond, not in Rockville. And so both with the red line and both with Mark expansion, I think it is very fair to say all of us would love for those to be expanded. That's not happening, and it's not our decision to make. So with this amendment, we are making sure that all future land use plans as of now do not consider the aspirational goal, but the realities on the ground. And this is a decision that we can change at any time. Should Randy Clark or any of his successors come back and say that they found billions of dollars to extend the red line to Frederick, which we would all love. Of course, County Executive Jessica Fitzwater would love that as well, as she shared with us over the weekend. But this whole conversation about this master plan is about the realities. The reality that M83 has already been taken out of the master planning process. And here there are two proposals, aspirational as they are, well-intentioned, and hopefully they will come to fruition at some point in time. But because they are not anywhere near likely to happen, they too should not be considered in the master planning process. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you. So very much support the amendment because it reflects the reality on the ground. But as has been mentioned by colleagues, it should not diminish our pushing for that aspirational thinking when we have a new governor and the pendulum will swing back. We will get through this awful storm that we are in right now at the federal level. And we do need to be aligned moving forward, but in the short term, this reflects the reality on the ground. But the reality on the ground is pretty bleak. The DC region is now the worst traffic area in the entire United States. We have passed Los Angeles, and the average commute time for people in the DMV is 33.4 minutes. And I would suspect it might even be a little higher for the people that live in the northern part of the county. It's impacting people's quality of life. It is preventing businesses from locating here. I know that as a fact, having just spoken to one who looked closely at some properties in the Germantown area, but chose not to move their business here in large part because of concerns over traffic. So I think we are going to have to reflect the reality on the ground as we develop our master plans and not create false hope. But the moons are going to be aligned at some point, and we just have to make this a tremendous priority as a region. And I know all of my colleagues have been doing that in different ways, but elections have consequences, and we're going to have to make sure that this is a priority of future governors and future elected officials at the national level as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you, Madam President. And I too want to thank the committee for all their hard work, and Councilmember Balcom for your bringing up this part of the discussion as well. I am going to vote for the action item, but I do think that part of the problem that we have for the traffic issues that we've had for many, many years is that we pretend that something is there. And I think this would go a long way to stop us pretending. I also have great concerns about the whole thing about M83. I realize it's not realistic. I realize it's not going to be built. I realize it has a variety of problems, but we never do alternatives. And because of that, until something is there, I don't believe we should stop something. We should take away the right of way or whatever until we know what we can do. Because the reality is there's no money. The reality is that this was not perhaps the best way for the transportation network to work, but we didn't do anything else either, and we allowed development to go forward. So I am going to vote for the action item, and I thank Councilmember Balcom.
Okay, great. All right, then all those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Yes. Thank you, Councilmember Jawando, and Councilmember Sales.
Okay. Are we going to vote on the full?
Yeah, I was just about to do that.
Okay. I just wanted to make a statement before we took the vote for the full removal of the M83, since, you know, as an at-large member, I am committed to eliminating transit deserts in our county. I know every resident has the right to feel connected and valued regardless of their zip code, mobility, or socioeconomic status. Some people may forget, because I'm an at-large council member, even though I represent the whole county, I am an up-county resident. So I am keenly aware that our communities, particularly those north of the Shady Grove Metro, from Gaithersburg to Clarksburg and beyond, have been systematically overlooked in crucial multimodal infrastructure developments. When public hearings are being planned, they should be held within the impacted communities to ensure the greatest engagement with them. When planning discussed potentially reopening M83, meetings were held in Wheaton and Gaithersburg, making it difficult for Clarksburg residents to make it to these public hearings. This neglect is unacceptable, and it must change. We must approach proposals like the M83 Northern Extension with a clear-eyed assessment of their economic and environmental impacts. Our communities deserve to thrive alongside the natural world, and it is our responsibility to protect our rich ecosystems and sensitive areas to maintain a vibrant and livable environment for everyone. Data must also guide our decisions and must ensure that the benefits decisively outweigh any environmental costs. I've heard from passionate residents during public hearings urging us to safeguard the habitats of our local wildlife, birds, insects, and countless others that call this area home. For this reason, I support removing the M83 Northern Extension from the master plan and appreciate my colleague, Councilmember Balcom, for her thoughtful amendments. And I know that together we will ensure that we drive a community that works for everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Before I turn to other colleagues, do you have anything? I want to have someone make a motion and move it. Okay. Is that good? Okay. So we have the master plan on highways and transitways of 2025, technical update. It has been amended, so I need a motion and a second. Who would like to move it?
So moved.
Councilmember Glass moved. Councilmember Lukey seconded. Now, if there's anyone else who would like to make any comments before we take the vote, I have Councilmember Lukey and then Balcom.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear because there were and I appreciate Councilmember Sales for reminding everyone she is in fact an Up-County resident, but that we are not removing all of M83. It is just the northern extension. And also want to note that, particularly since this impacts a huge chunk of my district, with the different sides and the nuance to these discussions is not like everybody's in this bucket over here or everybody's in this bucket over here, right? There are environmental concerns. There are concerns about all the many things that have happened developmentally around the proposed route over these last 50 plus years. Let me say that again. 50 plus years, older than me. I know, it's a miracle, older than me. But, for example, Montgomery Village, my residents in Montgomery Village have very nuanced feelings about this. They both respect that the Montgomery Village Foundation came and said, yeah, we support removing this. But also, something has got to be done. Because not just M83 not being built, but that whole roadway was proposed in the context of other adjacent roadways and things that also haven't been built. So doing what we have proposed to do, which is to do this study moving forward and figure out what to do for the present, we'll take into consideration all the other alternative things that have happened developmentally since then, and the ways in which we are currently living and commuting and so on, and what is realistic to the points about our other transit modes, so that we can rectify the situation that exists up-county. It's very necessary. So I appreciate everyone who has come out and supported or opposed, but raised your voices to be heard on this issue. And frankly, we need you to continue because we need you to have input and continue elevating your voices as we move forward with what the next iteration or solutions can be in order to affect appropriate change that is both environmentally friendly and relieves congestion in the Up-County. So with that, and that's why I wanted to second the motion, and I'm ready to go.
Thank you. Chair Glass.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and to all of our colleagues for this conversation, and to the entire community who's been talking about this for a very long time. This process, as we've been showing, is one of consistency, trying to make sure that our roadways and parkways are applied consistently throughout our planning process, and that's what Councilmember Balcom's amendment did. It's important to keep in mind that the first master plan of highways was approved and adopted in 1931. It's a long time ago. There have been a lot of plans that have been put forward, lots of things added to that plan as the county continued to grow. And just as things are added, things should be removed. That is the life cycle of the planning process. And before the committee took up this proposal, I drove along Mid-County Highway, I went to Montgomery Village Avenue to see where the M83 proposal would have started or ended, depending on which way you look. And what actually struck to me more than anything was there were two people who were actually walking along Mid-County Highway right on the shoulder. There were no sidewalks there. So we need to make the existing infrastructure safer for everybody. But M83 has been on the books for more than 60 years. It has been studied and analyzed extensively for 35 years. And that is why the planning department no longer considers it in the planning process. It is a phantom project that simply remains on the books in this proposal. And I think as we are consistent through our processes, we have to acknowledge the reality that it's not being considered, it's not being funded, and it should not be on the record. It is a remnant of planning designs from decades ago. In exchange for that, we have expressed support, budgetary and technical, for Observation Drive extended and for other projects that need to be built in that area to relieve some of the congestion. I have been a supporter of Observation Drive from the first day I joined the council, because there are transportation needs that need to be met up county. In addition to that, there are some concerns that I still have about the BRT plan, should that continue moving forward given the changing federal dynamics. The BRT proposal along 355 is scheduled to be built in 3 different segments. And I argued at T&E over the last number of years that if we are not having any other transportation programs being built in Up County, we need to prioritize the northern part of BRT. And the county executive had a different opinion, and that's the policy that has prevailed. It is the mid and southern part of 355 that is scheduled to be built first, not the northern part. I wish we would have prioritized the northern part. But the reality here is that things change, communities evolve, and as a native New Yorker, I'm reminded of the work that Robert Moses did over a very long period of time. Lots of ideas, lots of roads that were built, parkways and highways. Not all of them should have been built. A lot of them did not get built. And what we're acknowledging through this process is that M83 is not being built. So we need to be honest with everybody and simply remove it from this master plan. I yield back.
Thank you. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. So I appreciate the support that I received this morning from my colleagues on the amendments that were proposed. I also want to mention that in the consent calendar today, I am introducing a special appropriation for FY26 to ensure that the study is done in a timely manner. I want to thank Councilmember Friedson, Councilmember Lutke for co-sponsoring this special appropriation. And I am asking my colleagues to please support this when it comes back in the fall. The study has to be done as soon as it possibly can. Even with the changes proposed and the study, I cannot support this master plan of highways and transit, knowing that it does not provide the necessary highways or transit for my district. There are only 2 major roads in all the master plans throughout the county that have never been built. Both of them are Clarksburg roads, M83 and Observation Drive. And the planned transit that we talk so much about, the transit alternatives to Mid-County Extended, have never been built, never been funded. We no longer have the Corridor Cities Transitway. We don't have BRT on 355, and to be clear, the funding of record right now for BRT from Germantown to Clarksburg is toll lanes on I-270. Of course, we don't have toll lanes on I-270, and we don't have any plan for any increased capacity on I-270. We don't have additional lanes on 355. We don't have Observation Drive yet. We don't have Little Seneca Parkway Bridge over I-270. In fact, there is a proposed interchange on I-270 at Little Seneca Parkway, and in the draft Clarksburg Gateway Master Plan, planning staff is proposing to remove that interchange as well. At this point, it really isn't clear what's going to happen to the right-of-way for M83. So in addition to losing M83, it's possible that the community will also lose the planned bikeway along that corridor. We do have ride-on with 30-minute headways. To take a bus from Clarksburg to Rockville would take 1 hour and 14 minutes and 3 changes, according to Google Maps right now. The original scope of this map of this plan was never to include the evaluation and/or removal of major roads or highways. The majority of those impacted were not in favor of the removal of M83, did not speak at the first planning board hearing because there was no intention of removing that road. And the few people who spoke the louder regarding their desire to remove the highway were ultimately heard. This entire discussion is the epitome of the roads versus transit divide in the county, and it's not all in my head, but the up-county, down-county divide. There were comments in the testimony that building new roads does not comply with Thrive 2050. But we need to remember that before Thrive 2050, the prior general plan was the Wedges and Corridors Master Plan that recommended preservation of the wedges of green space in return for densely populated corridors. I-270 was one of those corridors with Rockville, Gaithersburg, Germantown, and Clarksburg as corridor cities. They were planned with a balance of houses, jobs, and retail town centers. Clarksburg was a planned community. The planning board and the county council approved that plan. All the houses that were built in my district in the past 30 years were based on master plans that were approved by the planning board and the council. Fast forward, we now have a new plan, and I have to listen to people as recently as the public hearing discount my entire district as sprawl. And I've listened to council members from this very dais talk about Clarksburg as a mistake, not this council. But here's the thing. When I moved into my house 30 years ago, I didn't approve that development. The planning board approved that development. The county council approved that development. Germantown, Clarksburg, Boys were all built on a plan that they were thriving urban centers. That did not happen. The county allowed all the houses to be built and then forgot about the rest. Nothing has been done to locate jobs in Germantown or Clarksburg. Nothing has been done to ensure that Clarksburg Town Center reaches its full potential. You can't add 100,000 people over 30 years and then forget about us. The Clarksburg community has continued to be betrayed. From the very beginning, when the first roads were built in Clarksburg, that fire trucks that were not wide enough for fire trucks to get down, to having an elementary school that has more children in portables than in the actual building, to waiting 20 years plus for their library, and there is still no plan for a rec center, a community center in Clarksburg. The county has done nothing to make sure that the up-county, that the Germantown and Clarksburg developments reach its full potential and the master plans that the planning board and the council approved. This is just not acceptable, it's not fair, and we must do better. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedson.
Well, thank you to Councilmember Balcom. I really appreciate the passion, the advocacy for your district and for your community. We need to take heed to those comments. I think you are reflecting the frustration that many residents feel in our county and in our community, a part of the county that is much larger and has many more residents than is oftentimes reflected in our public conversations. I am very appreciative that we are going to be accelerating the study. I don't think that it would have been appropriate for us to move forward with this without coming up with reasonable alternatives. I do think that a study is not adequate in and of itself. It's what the study leads to. It's what the ultimate projects would be. I think this is really at the heart of public expectations. I do think that having something in a master plan that we're never going to build is not reasonable either. But I also think that we need to come up with an alternative. I'm for modern transportation solutions, but that requires transportation solutions. And as of right now, we have yet to present and to move forward with a realistic plan and a timeline with funding that goes along with it for transportation solutions for up-county residents that need it. So I'm going to be supporting the committee recommendation. I am co-sponsoring and supportive of the funding to accelerate the study to make sure that we move forward with that. And I think that we have work to do here, as you've heard from colleagues, and I know Councilmember Balcom is going to hold us accountable to it, and I appreciate that, as she should, and residents should as well, for us to follow through. I'll just close by saying, when it comes to master plans, there's oftentimes a public conversation that it is the private sector that fails to fulfill their end of the bargain. But the more I've served on this body, and the more I have worked on master plans, the more I have come to realize that it is the public sector that oftentimes fails to follow through on our public commitments in master plans for what we reasonably set forth and set expectations and build community buy-in around. And Clarksburg is a perfect example of that. It is not the private sector, but it's the public sector that has not lived up to our end of the bargain. And that is the work that we have before us. That is what we must do. It doesn't mean that we should build things that we think are not meeting the current needs of our community, but it means that we have to build something. It means that we have to do something. It means that if we say that there are things that shouldn't be done, we have to put forward a plan for what should be done. And that's the work that I think we're going to have before us after we approve this master plan today.
Council Vice President Jawando.
Thank you. Appreciate the conversation. I really appreciate my seatmate and colleague, Councilmember Balcom, for her comments, many of which, if not all, I agree with. I'm going to vote differently. The reason I'm going to vote and support the committee recommendation is because I don't believe M83 will provide the relief that is needed and is justified for your residents and for the residents of Up County. If I did, it would be a much harder vote for me. There's environmental concerns, that historic kinship black community there. There's many reasons why I think to not do it. But the reasons to have a solution were so well put by Councilmember Balcom, and it is unfair and it's wrong to say that people who live in the Up County, which is a great part of our community, shouldn't have access to transit and shouldn't be able to get to things and amenities and be able to move around the county freely without horrible traffic. And so if it's not this, and the studies that I've seen don't suggest that this would not do, it's not worth the juice isn't worth the squeeze. It's not worth, it won't cut the time down. It won't provide that relief. But we do need to come with a suite of solutions, including transit, including better bus service, obviously, hopefully, including additional rail that would help relieve those residents, relieve that traffic for those residents. And it's one thing to say, if I were designing a community today, I would have done it better. But it's another thing to suggest, and I totally appreciate the point that, well, they're there, just don't worry about it. No, these are our community members, and we have to help them, and we have to come up with good solutions. I don't think this solution is one of them, but I'll be really eager to see how we need to move forward with this study so that we can fund and work with our private sector partners to deliver real solutions for the residents of Up County. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Council Vice President Jawando. Thank you to everyone for being here today. Thank you to Council Member Balcom for her prior amendment and also her work, and to Chair Glass for the robust conversation we had in committee. And I do want to just say thank you to Ms. Aldridge. While you presented for about 10 minutes today, we all know the hours and hours and hours that went into this report, this update, and I just wanted to specifically thank you for the excellent work that you've been doing on this, because we know there are a lot of details. There are many streets and roadways that have been classified in this report as notified in the appendix. So I just wanted to specifically thank you for all the work that you've done in this, and Mr. Kenny, to you as well. So we have a motion and a second to approve the Master Plan on Highways and Transitways 2025 technical update as amended. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is 10. Those opposed, 1. And that is now the Master Plan on Highways, Transitways 2025 technical update. Thank you again for being here. Now we are going to move on to agenda item number 2, which is our presentations from our Summer Fellow Program. I look forward to hearing from our summer fellows every year. This is a highlight of the year. This is the council's 9th year hosting the program, in which graduate students gain real-world local government experiences across multiple fields, and these presentations are the culmination of their work with the county government. We received over 100 applications, which were narrowed down to just 8 fellows from several local universities, as well as students as far away as California and Massachusetts. This year, our fellows worked with the Office of Food Systems Resilience, the Fire and Rescue Service, Department of Transportation, the Police Department, Community Use of Public Facilities, the Department of Permitting Services, and here at the Council. Mr. Anbiner, would you like to introduce the first panel of fellows, and then we will have a second panel.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning. Before we introduce the first panel, I'd just like to thank my colleagues on central staff who coordinated the program this year, Ms. Dunn, Mr. Mia, Ms. Rodriguez-Hernandez, as well as our other central staff, analysts, and colleagues who assisted the fellows with their independent research. I'd also like to thank the executive branch departments who all hosted a fellow and provided really productive and engaging experiences for their day-to-day work. That includes the Office of Food Systems Resilience, Fire and Rescue Service, Department of Transportation, MCPD, CUPF, and Department of Permitting Services. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Benzawi for our first presentation.
Hello, council members. My name is Zach Benzawi. I'm a graduate student at the George Washington University pursuing my master's in public policy. This summer I was placed in the Office of Food Systems Resilience. My presentation today will be about food insecurity in Montgomery County. Before I get started, I just want to give a very brief thank you to the council for this fantastic opportunity. This summer has been quite the experience getting to work with all of my colleagues, everyone overseeing the program, and I learned so much from the folks in the Office of Food Systems Resilience. They taught me a lot about working in local government. So let's get started. We'll start with the USDA definition of food insecurity. Food insecurity is a household-level economic and social condition of limited or uncertain access to adequate food. Next slide. Here's some quick statistics about food insecurity in Montgomery County. 34% of households were estimated to be food insecure in 2024. Spanish-speaking households were significantly more likely to report experiencing food insecurity than English-speaking households, and food insecure households were more likely to use multiple modes of transportation and to access to get their food from different sources, including food banks, pantries, or community distribution sites, relative to households that reported being food secure. In 2022, the Montgomery County Food Council conducted a survey on childhood hunger, and participants identified a number of barriers. On this slide, this is just my categorization of the barriers that were identified in the survey. There were 4 barriers: economic conditions, difficulty accessing desired and necessary foods, difficulty accessing food assistance, and difficulty accessing food retailers. In addition to the need identified in the 2022 Childhood Hunger Survey, there are also recent developments in current conditions regarding food insecurity that are likely to exacerbate problems for people experiencing food insecurity. Firstly, persistent and future economic security, which is both a national trend and a trend in Montgomery County. Additionally, we have federal cuts to social safety net programs, including SNAP, WIC, and Medicaid, as well as vulnerability of immigrant populations under the current presidential administration. Here are some programs that Montgomery County provides to residents experiencing food insecurity. The first one is the MC Groceries program, which provides monthly benefits to people who do not qualify for SNAP, but still have low and moderate incomes and are likely to still experience food insecurity. Secondly, is a series of grants provided by the Office of Food Systems Resilience that are provided to community organizations who provide on-the-ground support to people experiencing food insecurity. These are both programs that are offered by OFSR, but these are not the only programs that are offered by OFSR. To address food insecurity in the county, I have 3 main recommendations in my report. Firstly, the county can consider increasing the frequency of data collection around individual and community needs for food insecurity. As I mentioned, the 2022 Childhood Hunger Survey was incredibly valuable. It was conducted by the Montgomery County Food Council. It had a number of recommendations that actually resulted in the implementation of a valuable program like the MC Groceries program. However, that was last conducted in 2022, and there hasn't been another survey that was conducted since. There is not very readily available food insecurity data for people experiencing food insecurity in the county. And the county council could take steps to increase that collection of data around food insecurity, whether that's working with the Montgomery County Food Council to conduct another hunger survey, not just for children, or it could it could increase the use of food insecurity questions in current community assessment surveys like those done by HHS. Secondly, the County Council could leverage evaluations, food insecurity data, and community partnerships to determine best uses of resources for food retail access programs that mitigate barriers to food security in Montgomery County. OFSR already does a lot around program evaluations for the programs that it offers. So there's already work being done around evaluations for our programs. However, the council could leverage these evaluations and potentially increased data collection to implement programs for policy interventions around food retail access programs, which are outlined in my report. Finally, the county can increase the number of families that are participating in the MC Groceries program due to persistent need and cuts to federal spending on food assistance. As I mentioned, the MC Groceries program does a great job of addressing unmet need for people experiencing food insecurity but don't get SNAP benefits. In the face of cuts to programs like SNAP, the county could take steps to intervene and mitigate these reductions in social safety net programs. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. My name is Claire Biffle. I'm a student at the University of Maryland studying public policy, and today I'll be speaking about the prevalence and risk of unwanted fire alarms in Montgomery County, often commonly referred to as false alarms. So my research has focused specifically on automatic fire alarms, or AFAs, and these are alarm systems that are monitored by third-party companies. And so when they receive a trouble condition from an alarm system, they reach out to a public safety answering point or a 911 call center and request emergency personnel be dispatched to investigate. So a subset of AFAs are unwanted alarms, and these are defined as any alarm that is not the result of a potentially hazardous condition, meaning that no emergency service needs to be performed. Unwanted alarms can be categorized into these four groups. The first two, malicious and unintentional, are largely the result of human activity, people pulling fire alarms, and so they can't be diminished by anything really other than better fire education. But the second two, nuisance and unknown, are the focus of my project. And these are alarm activations that are the result of any sort of bad weather, loss of power, loss of internet, poor installation, and so those are the focus here. So over the last 5 years, the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service has faced a growing burden in dispatches and AFAs with a budget that hasn't quite kept pace with their work. So it's more important than ever to be efficient and effective in their precision fire responses. Looking specifically at this past year, in 2024, MCFRS personnel were dispatched to over 138,000 calls. Of those total calls, 18,000 were fire-related, and almost 60% of those fire-related calls were originated from AFAs. So the important number to note here is that only half of 1% of all of these AFA calls were the result of actual structure fires. So there's a big discrepancy here in the number of actual emergencies that are taking place versus the burden on fire personnel. This chart illustrates more clearly the relationship between all AFAs and unwanted alarms. So over the last 5 years, 95% of all AFAs can be categorized as unwanted, meaning that no emergency services were performed over the course of the call. Here's the geographic distribution of all unwanted alarms in the year 2024. You can see that there's a correlation between unwanted alarms and high population dense areas, as well as socially vulnerable populations, which are here outlined in blue. There's some significant costs associated with attending unwanted alarms, specifically the direct costs to fire personnel and vehicles. Fire vehicles are purchased at great expense to the county based on the number of calls that stations are going out on, so it's important to have accurate numbers about the numbers of emergencies that are actually taking place in the county. Indirect costs of unwanted alarms I discuss more in my report, but today I'd like to highlight alarm complacency. Residents of buildings with frequent unwanted alarms are at much higher risk during an actual emergency because they're not prepared for it. So the Montgomery County Police Department was facing a similar issue in the 1980s and 90s. As burglar alarm systems became more common around the county, police were responding to greater numbers of, they refer to them as false alarms. And so the false alarm reduction section, or FARS, was stood up within the police department with these enforcement mechanisms, and it's been really successful. The one enforcement mechanism I'd like to talk about today specifically is enhanced call verification, and this is the requirement that all alarm companies that operate within Montgomery County call 2 numbers that are associated with the alarm user before requesting police dispatch. And this gives the alarm user the opportunity to say, I've entered my PIN incorrectly, or my Wi-Fi's out, and you don't actually have to send the police out. So that's greatly reduced the number of unneeded dispatches. Here you can see the success rate of FARS since implementation in 1994. Since then, total registered alarm users in the county have gone up, while total false alarms have gone down. In 2024, there was a false alarm rate of only about 10%. So that's a good measure of success for the FARS program. So here are some recommendations for the council's consideration. First would be to establish an unwanted fire alarm reduction mechanism, either similar to FARS or combining with FARS, the burglar alarm and fire alarm under one ordinance. The second would be to mandate enhanced call verification, requiring that alarm companies reach out to the property owner or manager before requesting fire dispatch. Third would be to incentivize sprinkler retrofits while implementing interim measures. Special consideration should be made to the 136 unsprinklered high-rise buildings in the county. I discuss this more in my report, but these buildings are the greatest fire risk in the county and need to be considered separately from other buildings. And finally, the council should consider the impacts on socially vulnerable county residents, as the risk of displacement with any sort of building ordinance or sprinkler mandate is high for these residents. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Biffle.
Good morning, council members. My name is Chloe Dorff. I'm a student at American University, and today I'm speaking about Capital Bike Share and e-scooter access in Montgomery County. To begin, some research questions that guided my analysis. I asked 3 central questions. I asked, how does Capital Bike Share coverage in Silver Spring compare to the area's concentration of e-scooters and e-bikes? What is the relationship between usage patterns and equity? And what steps can the county take to address potential equity shortcomings in Capital Bike Share and those e-scooter programs? To begin, just a bit of overview about Capital Bike Share in the county. On the left, you can see some of the data from FY24 on rides and stations. In FY 2022, we saw 96,000 rides in the county, and in FY 24, that grew 50% to over 144,000 rides. Over the last 5 years, we've also seen 20% system growth in the entire Capital Bike Share program. And critical to our county is the Bike Share for All program, our equity program. In 2024, over 10,000 of our 144,000 rides were Bike Share for All rides. Looking at e-scooters in Montgomery County, in 2024, we saw over 242,000 trips on e-scooters in our Montgomery County pilot area. Our primary provider right now is Lime Micromobility, and we utilize memorandums of understanding to permit our e-scooter services, and that includes guidelines for proper vendor conduct, and it's primarily enforced right now by the MCDOT. At the present moment, there are no criteria related to equitability that are present in our MOU. Looking more at program objectives, it's important to note here that program objectives for both programs rely a lot on equity. Shared objectives include linking those low-income individuals with jobs, addressing first and last mile transit linkages, and also providing broader access to transit for people of color and underserved communities. In addition, this relates to our Thrive Montgomery 2050 goals. We're improving access to transportation that increases racial equity and social justice, and emphasizing biking, walking, and transit to get away from that single occupancy vehicle use as well. So the case study area I looked at was Silver Spring, primarily the Silver Spring Equity Focus area. I chose this region because it operates both Lime e-scooters and Capital Bike Share bikes in a large number, so there's a significant amount in the pilot area. It has 12 Capital Bike Share stations, and there's at least one metro station or major transit center, which is important when we're considering first and last mile transit linkages. So the Silver Spring has the Silver Spring Metro and also the Silver Spring Transit Center. Just a brief overview of the Silver Spring EFA and some of those demographics as well. 43% of households in the EFA are low income. 38% make less than $50,000 a year. 63% approximately are people of color. So like the rest of Montgomery County, there is no one racial majority. And on average, households have about 1 vehicle compared to the county average of 2 to 3. So the primary findings I found in my study were that e-scooter concentrations in Silver Spring were greater than available Capital Bike Share bikes, and that's just on average. And while a majority of Capital Bike Share stations and e-scooters are within that Silver Spring EFA, there are disparities there as well. Overall, within the EFA, there were 7 of 12 Capital Bike Share stations and over 130 e-scooters. But at those bike share stations, there were on average for a station of 12 to 15 slots, about 4 bikes. In comparison, while e-scooters look to be doing pretty well, when we look at a broader scale at the rest of the pilot area, in the last 3 months, 55% of Lime e-scooters have been distributed to the Silver Spring EFA. And the next highest number for an EFA is the Central Wheaton EFA, which receives 6% of all e-bikes, or e-scooters. So that's about 14 e-scooters. And there's also some other considerations in this equity. There's cost difference, transparency, and public perception that play roles as well. Lime is costlier and less transparent overall than Capital Bike Share. Lime's equity program, Lime Access, is not as widely known. Last year, only 24% of users across the country knew what Lime Access was. And public perception of parking compliance, safety, and also the role of e-scooters in communities plays a role in how they expand. So my overall finding was that vehicle supply alone does not signify increased equitability. With this in mind, I do have 2 recommendations for the council. The first involves Capital Bike Share collaboration and what we can do for infrastructure. The council could utilize the county's role as a stakeholder in Capital Bike Share to enter discussions and maybe work sessions about rebalancing strategies and what could be done to distribute things more equitably, or bikes more equitably within these regions. The council could consider increasing program and bike funding. Primarily, when we look at Capital Bike Share, a big portion of the revenue right now is funneled back into the general fund. If funds could be moved back toward the Capital Bike Share program, we can see a more self-funding structure that could help with operations. There's also the consideration of increasing station numbers in Silver Spring and some additional infrastructure equity changes like needs assessments in areas where e-scooters already are and where they could be, more bike-safe infrastructure considerations to up ridership, and also community partnership programs between Lime and major community players as well. My second recommendation has to do with our MOU overall. Council support for the MCDOT in amending that MOU could be really integral if we're going to implement equity changes. And these findings are based on a couple of different jurisdictions nearby. We could look at required EFA allocations, so taking percent allocations from e-scooters to distribute to different EFAs. That could be between like 5 and 15%, depending on the fleet size. Compliance metrics are a big one as well to incentivize these parking metrics and as well as the equitable distribution factors. And then there's equity plans, which involve Lime a lot more in the process. The MCDOT could create standards that need to be upheld, but the Lime would have more of a role in setting these equity plans in a way that aligns with their operational plans. So yeah, thank you.
Good morning, Council. My name is Jackson Dillard. I'm a Master's of Public Policy student at George Washington University. And today I'm going to talk to you about measuring community trust in the MCPD. So community trust is defined as the respect and cooperation between police agencies and the communities they serve. And community trust in police supports every police action. The MCPD clearly understands the importance of having the community's support, engaging in numerous outreach initiatives. In 2024, the Community Engagement Division Annual Report noted 18 different methods of outreach conducted by that division alone, and that doesn't consider the outreach conducted by other offices such as the chief or individual units. But the essential question becomes, for all this outreach, how much does the community trust the police, and what is that impact having, the impact of that outreach? So first, let's look at the nation. Across the nation, confidence in the police has fallen over the last decade, dropping below a majority approval for perhaps the first time in history. And unfortunately, there's no comparable metric in Montgomery County. Let's look first at what metrics in Montgomery County do exist. I'm going to focus on repeated measures because they allow us to analyze trends over time. The most valuable is the National Community Survey, performed every few years. This survey contains questions that assess residents' feelings of safety, as well as the MCPD quality of service, but no questions that assess the community's trust in police. There's also the MCPD Community Survey, launched in the fall of last year. This was an excellent jumping off point for evaluating community trust, but was limited by its methodology, only being posted on Nextdoor and social media, and scope, only receiving approximately 80 responses, where the National Community Survey typically receives around 800. One upcoming measure that I'd like to discuss is the MCPD Post-Contact Survey. The pilot for this program will begin in August of this year, where residents who call the Emergency Communications Center and interact with an operator or perhaps an officer will receive a follow-up survey via text in the hours afterwards. The targeted nature of this survey has both pros and cons. People who have just called 911 are an incredibly important demographic to survey, but they might not represent the community as a whole. I should note the questions in this survey do evaluate community trust. One thing that my research has led me to conclude is that what's missing is a community-wide survey. It's performed with some regularity that assesses the community trust in the police, not only the quality of service provided and not only residents' feelings of safety. Most importantly, this survey needs to contain disaggregated information. The only survey that we have to date that has contained disaggregated information is the 2019 iteration of the National Community Survey, which saw swings of 10 to 12% across different race and ethnic groups as well as income and age brackets. The Council touched on this in enacted Bill 4520, passed in the fall of 2021, which called for an annual survey of community police relations. The MCPD estimated this to cost $100,000, but it has not been funded to date. This brings me to my recommendations. First, include community trust questions in the National Community Survey. Currently, this survey already contains county-specific questions, namely the ones that assess MCPD quality of service. It might be quite simple to add additional questions that assess the level of community trust in the police. The second is to conduct targeted surveys, such as exit surveys at face-to-face events, or surveys that identify and then facilitate engagement with low-trust demographics. Neither of these are perfect because they don't represent the community as a whole. The third is to fund community police relations survey that was initially laid out in enacted Bill 4520, as well as taking advantage of potential cost reductions that may have emerged in recent years. Most notably, the suite of technologies contained in the Axon Officer Safety Plan procured by the department in the most recent fiscal year. As I conclude, I'd like to leave you with an analogy. Community trust in police is like a bank account. Every interaction between a member of the MCPD and a member of the community is either a deposit into this account or a withdrawal. The quantitative measures like I've discussed today are like bank statements. They let you know how much is in the account. And just like your bank's account balance might inform how you spend, these quantitative measures would guide the MCPD in their outreach initiatives in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the first panel in the variety of reports and recommendations. I'll turn it to my colleagues in a minute for questions, but I just had a couple. I'll kick us off. And Ms. Biffle, I don't know if I don't necessarily have a question, but just a thank you. I think if we bring back Councilmember Mink, if she's still available online, this is the topic you talked about is very near and dear to our heart. It was actually part of a bill that I passed a year ago, the Tenant Protection and Notification Bill, and we're still unfortunately waiting for the regulations on that. But I think your recommendations, and I look forward to looking at your full report because this is something that is very important to our residents. We actually had a very large apartment complex a couple of weeks ago that because of the number of fire alarms that were going off, actually had to take their whole system offline for a number of days, and it does not have sprinklers. So this is really something we need to tackle, and I do want to thank Councilmember Mink for all of her work and advocacy on this as well. I did want to come, Mr. Dillard, one question. Thank you so much. As someone who is a survey researcher by profession, I always love to see folks advocate for more research to look at opinions of folks in our community. One question I had is, did you have a chance to look at the community facility livability study that we do here in the county. I haven't looked at it in a little bit, so I don't know how in-depth it goes in terms of questions regarding the police department and trust, but I didn't know if that could also be a resource.
I think what I found across the board was that all of the repeated measures and one-shot measures that I discussed in my report contain a small subset of questions that related to safety that they're often touched on in every survey performed. But they're limited in that they don't cover the full breadth of our residents' access to safety. And one thing we understand is that residents in the county might not all experience safety equally, and it becomes critical to then gather results and also disaggregate that information and understand where those disparities exist.
Thank you. I'll turn it over now to Councilmember Katz.
Did you say anything? Yes. Thank you, Madam President. And first off, thank you to all the summer fellows. It's always such a strange name for a group, fellows, summer fellows especially. But I did want to thank you for all your presentations. And there's every one is important, no question. Two obviously dealt directly with public safety. And Ms. Baff, how do you say your last name? Biffle? Biffle. Ms. Biffle, let me ask you about the whole idea of the dual checking on a fire alarm. How much time does that add to the call before it's dispatched?
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. I don't have metrics about exactly how much time would be added, but it would require the alarm company to dial 2 phone numbers. And if no one answered either time, then the alarm company would call the 911 dispatch and request emergency personnel. So a response would be given if no one answered. I would estimate it to be just a couple minutes of a delay, which should be considered when enacting something like enhanced call verification mandate, because obviously the risk for a fire can be significant in just those couple minutes. But given that 5% of all automatic fire alarm calls actually required any emergency response, and only half of 1% were related to structure fires that they were supposed to be indicating, I think there's a middle ground of efficiency that could be got here.
And I appreciate your answer. Do you know of any community that's done this?
Yes, there are actually several jurisdictions. In Maryland, Calvert County and Charles County both have fire alarm ordinances that coexist with the burglar alarm ordinances. And so there's one alarm ordinance that includes both of those things. There are also jurisdictions all over the United States that have either enhanced call verification or other false alarm reduction mechanisms. And so this is a nationwide problem. False alarms are on the increase. And so different jurisdictions are dealing with it in creative ways.
Thank you. And we should check with them to see how much success or concern it's caused in their communities. Obviously, they're not identical to Montgomery County, but they're certainly somebody that we can check on. So I appreciate that. And Mr. Dillard, and we've already touched on some of your research, but do you know of a community that has done this the very best, your surveys?
Well, I think the most interesting one to examine is the National Community Survey. So that's a professional survey group run by Polco that surveys different counties around the nation. Yep. And it should be noted that while we've seen residents' feelings of safety fall in Montgomery County over the last decade, they haven't fallen outside of what Polco considers the national benchmark. I would lean into this body that has so much experience surveying different counties around the United States to figure out the best way that they recommend to expand surveys within the county.
Because the work is so very important. Everybody wants to do the right thing. The question is, how do you get to the groups that you need to hear from, and they need to hear from you, and that becomes a difficulty. So I do thank you for all of your work as well. So thank you to the summer fellows. We appreciate it today.
Thank you. I just want to note we have our fire chief here, Chief Smedley. And Chief Smedley, you missed Ms. Biffle's presentation, but you can go back and watch it. And I think a number of us will be talking to you some more about some of her recommendations. Council Vice President Jawando.
Thank you very much. Yes, and welcome, Chief. And thank you all. These were amazing presentations. I think one through line through all of them was the need for better data to inform our decisions, and that's something we are constantly seeking and working with, because you have assumptions, but you need to know exactly what's going on, and whether it's the access to food, access to transit, public safety, either how we're responding to calls and reducing that time, because obviously in the case of your presentation, Ms. Biffle, if you're wasting all this time to responding to calls that aren't happening, there's a cost there. There's a big cost. And we've talked about that in the context of, I didn't know the numbers were that high. I knew they were high. I think if you asked everyone up here, probably everyone in the room, have you been involved in a fire alarm that was pulled where there was nothing wrong? I bet you everyone has done that. I didn't know it was that high, that we're talking about, 5% of the time. What was the number again? He said, is it 5%?
Yeah, over the past 5 years, 95% of all automatic fire alarms have been unwanted.
Right, and that's just a tremendous number. And when you add that also to something the chief and I have talked about, and I know he's talked about publicly with others, the fact that fire service has changed in the last several decades to be primarily EMS response, so you're talking about just really big changes that should necessitate a response. On the public safety, I've done a lot of work in this issue over the years, and one of the things I've always said is, and you underscored this, is that depending on who you are, you experience public safety very differently in the country, and we're no different in the county. And we don't have great metrics, as you pointed out, of figuring that out in a very statistically based, kind of survey-based way. We tried to address that in 4520, but as you said, it hasn't been funded. Did you research whether there had been a proposal in the budget since 2020 to fund it? I don't remember.
So the funding as listed by the MCPD was proposed in the county executive's budget in fiscal year 24, and it did not make it across the finish line, and it has not been funding has not been requested since. One thing I would like to add is that with the procurement of the Axon Officer Safety Plan, it's likely that the cost of implementing a community survey would be greatly reduced to the MCPD. So I don't actually know how much value that number in particular has anymore, but that's the history on that.
Got it. And I really appreciate that. Well, a lot for us to think about, and thank you on the food security and the transit as well. Really appreciate the reports. Thank you.
Great. And I'm going to go to Councilmember Lukey and then Councilmember Sales, and then we're going to turn to the next panel because I want to give them appropriate amount of time. And unfortunately, the council has to go into a closed session. So, Councilmember Lukey.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. Thank you for all of you for your hard work. A question regarding the alarms and the false alarms, because it is a huge issue. As I understand it now, and I'm going to admit I've experienced it, right? For alarms that are registered with the county system, if there is an alert that pings out to the system, out to our ECC or for dispatch, they call the number on file. So like if something happens in my house, might have been a cooking episode and it wasn't mine and I wasn't home, but I got a call, right? And they said, is there an issue? So I'm curious about whether that is happening to some extent already, because there is a difference about alarm basis versus a human has called 911 and the emergency call center is dispatching. So I just wanted you to have an opportunity to speak to that.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yes, it's happening with some companies, but it's not uniform across the county. And there's no requirement right now that all fire alarm monitoring companies have the same procedure for calling residents. And I do also want to touch on the fact that of the importance of calling 911, because the MCFRS dispatches different vehicles with different response types based on the structure, whether it's residential or commercial,
Correct.
whether it's sprinklered or not sprinklered. And so at any point during the call, let's say an AFA goes into a call center, at any point that call could be upgraded if a resident of the building calls 911 and substantiates it if there's smoke or anything visible. So yes, sometimes these alarm companies call residents to confirm before requesting dispatch, but not all the time.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then for my next question, thank you for your work with the police surveys. And, you know, I too love data. Many of us do, but and I am happy I took statistics in college, but that is not my forte, right? I want to respect that limitation. However, a lot of significant policy questions that we want to answer are not as simple as N equals X, right? But I've seen before where policymakers do use a simple N equals X and go, there's my conclusion, when that's really not it, right? It is multifactorial and requires a significant amount of work on the front end, on the methodology, before you do the analysis and, in fact, draw a conclusion. I'm saying this to you because I know you have to study this as a part of your degree program, and you may or may not like statistics. But with respect to the National Community Survey, one thing I know that, like, for example, in our hate crimes law in Maryland, our hate crimes and hate bias reporting law in our public safety article is different from what the federal crime reporting is. So our departments, if there is a hate bias and hate crime incident, they capture it one way for Maryland and one way federally. So to the extent that that survey does allow for referencing local department or local jurisdiction, what, if any, flexibility or variability is there with adding questions in, separate and apart from what would be standardized, except adaptable with a few words to fit a local department?
So my understanding is that the questions that assess residents' feelings of safety, those are standard as implemented across the country. The questions that are in there now that assess MCPD's quality of service provided, those have been added at the county level. It is not clear to me how straightforward it would be to add additional questions, or if this survey that is intended to operate at the national level would in any way be accommodating to adapting other questions. I think that was probably the council's intention in this section of Bill 4520 in calling for the annual survey that was county specific, was to develop something that could be where each question could be adapted and each question could be perfected for use within Montgomery County.
Thank you. And I think that's important, because if it isn't adaptable into that national community survey, we do need to look at how do we craft questions that, again, as you noted, the survey pilot that's starting in August is good, but it captures a niche group of people. It doesn't capture everyone. The one that was done on Nextdoor, my colleagues have heard me say how I feel about Nextdoor, but that's also a very niche group of people. Not exactly comprehensive and not exactly methodologically sound, right? So we have a lot of work to do, but I think your work that you did this summer highlights a lot of specific things that could be built upon by the department. So thank you.
Councilmember Sayles?
Thank you again to all of our fellows that have presented so far. It was a pleasure meeting with you last week. I'll start from the top. Since we recognized our seniors this morning, we know that our seniors are vulnerable to food insecurity, and so I'm glad to see attention being focused on how we can optimize our Office of Food Systems Resilience to address their needs and bring healthier food to our residents. Regarding the fire alarms as well, we've had some pretty nasty fires here in the county, and so getting the response times and the technology associated with these automated fire systems is also important. So thank you for highlighting this gap, and hopefully we can work with our fire chief and others to improve the technology to see how we can improve the response times and the calls to ensure that we are deploying the appropriate resources when necessary. And the bike share and scooter access, ensuring that we are bringing this multimodal transportation to residents who may not have the ability to use it is so important. I know my colleagues recognize Parks and Rec. They offer programs where you can train on these scooters and bicycles, because not everyone knows how to properly use them. And I know my colleague is also introducing legislation to ensure that cars aren't blocking the bike lanes as well, so that people who do use them can use them and operate them safely. So thank you for thinking about the people who may not have access to these transportation alternatives. It's so important that we think about who is not in the room when we are having discussions about policy solutions. Oftentimes the people who make it are the people who drive the discussion and the focus of priorities. And we put out this survey. I believe it's every other year we do the community survey for. It would be good to see how we could enhance the survey by asking questions about our police department and any other number of things. Every year we get feedback about what else we can include to capture the temperature of this county. It's so big, and so it's a snapshot in time of some of the timely issues and an opportunity for us to reflect and think about policies to improve service delivery. So thank you to all of you. I am so excited about the future of public service, and future policymakers cannot wait to unleash you all into the community. Congrats.
Thank you. As a reminder, we get to read your full reports when they're done, and they'll be online, so looking forward to that. And I think Mr. Einbeyer, we'll turn it over to the next group.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good morning, members of the County Council. My name is Sarah Hoffman, and I am a Master of Community Planning student at University of Maryland. For my research project, I evaluated the impacts of tool lending programs and explored recommendations for Montgomery County. Tool lending programs are initiatives in which patrons can borrow tools at little or no cost. They typically carry a wide variety of tools, operate as nonprofits, are sustained by community support and fees, and run additional programming to supplement tool lending. So one popular program is the Repair Cafe, during which individuals can bring in broken items to be repaired with the help of volunteers. The only tool lending program in Montgomery County is run out of the nonprofit Rockville Science Center, and I'll refer to it as the RSC Tool Library. So there are several challenges facing the county. Environmentally, reducing waste and addressing the impacts of climate change are top priorities. Economically, tight budgets for residents and businesses and lagging job growth need to be addressed. And from an equity perspective, economic disparities, under-resourced nonprofits, and an aging population call for equitable access to resources. Tool lending programs promote environmental responsibility in several ways. They help reduce waste through material reuse and repair programming, and can maximize the use and life of tools through sharing and regular maintenance. Tool lending programs also provide critical resources to communities impacted by disaster and weather events, and can support stormwater management projects such as rain barrels. These programs also promote economic vitality by providing low-cost access to tools and knowledge. They help reduce economic barriers for entrepreneurs and small businesses. They can also support placemaking initiatives for businesses, such as public art and outdoor furniture projects. And these programs offer opportunities to learn and develop skills, and to offer a practical way for residents to save money on home repair and other projects. And lastly, tool lending programs promote social equity goals. With equitable access to tools and knowledge, these programs empower individuals and communities to turn ideas into reality. Many programs support local nonprofits, saving them money for staffing and services.
These programs have developed into vibrant community gathering spaces, bringing social and practical benefits. For example, several programs have hosted or supported service events in their communities. And with an emphasis on skill sharing and mentorship, these programs frequently facilitate intergenerational relationships. 2 previous tool lending programs in the county, one in Tacoma Park and the other through the public libraries, demonstrated strong community interest in lending programs. However, both eventually ended due to challenges related to perceived inconvenience and inaccessibility, difficulties acquiring and maintaining tools, and limited funding. The RSC Tool Library has since emerged as a promising initiative, receiving a significant number of tool donations and interest from community members in programming such as home maintenance classes and repair cafe events. However, their current space is too small to accommodate their expanding inventory and to host larger scale events. I will offer my top 3 recommendations, and there are additional ones in my report. So first, the county should consider conducting a community needs and interest assessment. This assessment would identify populations and areas of high interest in tool lending programs. Additionally, an assessment could inform the expansion of the RSC Tool Library based on community demands. For example, the survey could collect information on the types of tools, classes, or events that groups are interested in. Next, Montgomery County should consider partnering with RSC Tool Library to expand its services. One opportunity is a mobile tool lending service where the tool inventory can be moved around using a vehicle or a portable container. This option increases accessibility to tools and can meet more specific needs. For example, a mobile tool lending service could be sent to support service events across the county, such as neighborhood cleanup, public art, or stormwater management projects. Finally, Montgomery County should consider partnering with RSC Tool Library to host and run regular repair cafe events. These events could be held at public facilities throughout the county and could coincide with other waste reduction and recycling events, such as battery drop-off or composting classes. The DEP has expressed interest in developing a lending program and running repair cafe events, so there's already government interest in these types of programs. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Good morning, Council. My name is Colin Larson. I'm a Master's in City Planning student at MIT, and my research focused on floating zones. So the first question to answer is, what are floating zones and why do we have them? As you all know, zoning in the county is typically set through the master plan process. Master plans tend to look ahead 20 years. A lot can change in a 20-year period, so floating zones fill this gap, where on a parcel-by-parcel basis, applicants can request rezoning as economic conditions may change. So in Montgomery County, this process is called a local map amendment, an LMA. This is a rough outline of how an applicant seeks this. You know, they apply first to planning, they get a planning staff review, they get a planning board recommendation. OZA, the Office of Zoning and Administrative Hearings, holds a hearing. The hearing examiner writes their own report recommendation, and then it comes to you all as the district council. And the statutory rough limit on this is 205 days. Extensions can be granted, and they usually are. I was, for a couple of private sector people that I interviewed for this report who have gone through this process, estimated that this costs between $150,000 and $250,000 just to get the zoning. And then development review is an entirely different process to get the property entitled to actually build. So the research question is, do our floating zones do what we want them to do? And the answer would seem to be not really. You can look at the graph on the left, and this is the number of floating zones that are sought per year since 2004, which was the earliest year that I have publicly available information. In 2014, the zoning code was rewritten with the intent to simplify floating zones, but you actually see a decline in the number of floating zones sought, so that typically only 3 per year actually make it to council for action in the entire county. And then if you look at the chart on the right, these are the most common rezoning sought during this 20-year period. So the 2 most common ones are the RT and PD zones, which are residential townhouse and planned development. And these were actually replaced in 2014. So this chart also basically shows that the types of floating zones that were granted from 2004 to 2014 don't happen anymore. And we can talk about some reasons why that might be the case. So you can look at this map. The red dots are the pre-2014 floating zones. The blue dots are the post-2014 floating zones. So a lot of floating zones were granted up county, which were for those planned developments and those townhouse developments. Those were greenfield. The cost of the process, was worth it to do these developments. As the county's been more built out, a lot of those don't really make sense anymore. You can't do that kind of thing. And there were also floating zones sought in urbanized areas like downtown Bethesda. Since that time, the base zoning in those urbanized areas is higher than what floating zones would allow. And that's generally the case. Is once you request a floating zone, it's very rare that you're actually allowed to build more than what's already on the ground. And then you can also imagine that procedural burden and the uncertainty around the development based on how discretionary this process is not very appealing. And there's obviously other macroeconomic factors that affect real estate development writ large. So I have some recommendations, and I have more in the report. This can get into the weeds very quickly, but essentially there are limitations on who can even apply for a floating zone. There are pretty extensive prerequisites. I recommend simplifying this and expanding which parcels are eligible for floating zones. And then I would also recommend eliminating or significantly reducing the role of OZA in this process. OZA's involvement in this is unique to floating zones. They're not involved in map amendments for master plans or ZTAs, other ways that zoning has changed. And the hearing specifically introduces a lot of uncertainty and cost for applicants. And then there's other application requirements themselves that are very onerous. And then just a quick note on development standards. As I mentioned, once you get a floating zone, it's pretty uncommon to be able to build anything more than what's already on the ground. So I would recommend increasing, the allowable density, and particularly for residential floating zones, which are almost never used for this reason. And then I would also recommend switching to a floor to area ratio regulatory standard rather than units per acre, which is what was done in the workforce housing ZTA that you all just passed. This allows more flexibility in unit size and unit arrangement. And even in a residential detached single family floating zone, if you have a FAR limit instead of a units per acre, you can build something like the development you'd see here on the right, which is sometimes called a cottage court. So these are much smaller homes. They can be sold as fee simple properties, and they would be much lower in cost than other new build homes in the county, which is something that the county has expressed an interest in seeing. So once again, there's a lot more info in my report if you're more interested in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, Council. My name is Anna Nachi, and I'm a graduate student at George Washington University. Today, I'll be speaking about the resources that the county offers for residents who hope to learn English as a second language. To begin, Montgomery County is incredibly linguistically diverse, with 43.4% of its population over the age of 5 primarily speaking a language other than English. While many of these residents do also speak English, a large portion do not, with 16.2% of the population reporting having limited English proficiency, meaning that they speak English less than very well. For residents that do hope to learn English, there are a wealth of resources within Montgomery County. Specifically, there are 63 public, nonprofit, and business organizations that provide ESOL, or English for Speakers of Other Languages classes. 2 important providers from the county are the Gilchrist Immigrant Resource Center and Montgomery College. These 2 providers, as well as the 61 others, are coordinated by McHale, or the Montgomery Coalition for Adult English Literacy, which was also created by the county to act as a coordinating organization and provide grant funding to providers who need it most. These classes are incredibly beneficial to the residents who do choose to take advantage of them. serving 12,328 learners in the past year, and the vast majority of these learners agree that these classes help them be more involved in their community at large, as well as their child's educational journey. They also agree that these skills have allowed them to achieve improved or maintained health and economic status. Despite the benefits that these classes are able to provide, they are unfortunately not equally accessible for all residents in Montgomery County. The map on the right divides the county based upon the area served by each respective regional service center. Additionally, the shaded areas on the map represent high-need areas or census tracts where more than 10% of the population has limited English proficiency. As the table on the left showcases, Eastern Montgomery and Up County have the highest number of these high-need areas compared to the other areas in the county. Which is cause for even more concern, Eastern Montgomery also has by far the lowest number of in-person ESOL providers. Additionally, despite Up County having the highest raw number of these providers, they're almost entirely concentrated around Germantown and Gaithersburg, raising concerns for more rural residents in their ability to access these classes. McHale has done a wonderful job of implementing changes that increase accessibility over the past years, though these gaps do persist. First, the introduction of Zoom ESOL classes during COVID-19 lockdown ensured that residents from any region in the county were able to access these classes. This did raise separate concerns about residents who are unable to access laptops. However, the partnership with the Computer for You initiative run through Montgomery Connects allowed for free laptops to be handed out to residents who needed them most. Additionally, McHale launched the Community Learning Group program in 2021, which allowed for starter groups of 8 to 10 potential ESOL learners to be identified and given starter instruction to be connected to further ESOL resources down the line. One specifically successful example of this collaboration was with the Caribbean American Advisory Group. The leader of such a group, Mr. Rodrigue Vital, realized the large number of residents who needed these resources, specifically in the East County region, and he worked with McHale to start an incredibly successful community learning group, which held over 30 classes and served over 50 residents in the fall of 2023. While these changes have been incredibly successful in bridging these accessibility gaps, large barriers do remain to make equitable access a future. First, there are simply fewer organizations that offer ESOL classes in East County and Up County. McHale has made it a priority to give grant funding to these organizations, however, there are simply fewer of them. The Community Learning Group program was started to bridge these gaps, however, even these groups are unable to proceed without trained ESOL instructors to be able to lead them. Additionally, McHale understands the importance of increasing their outreach efforts to start these community learning groups and to make ESOL offerings more accessible as a whole. However, they lack the bandwidth to do so as an 11-member organization. This brings me to my recommendations. First, the Council should support the creation of an ESOL outreach committee, which includes not only McHale, but also the leaders of these advisory groups, such as Mr. Vital. What made this community learning group so successful is that Mr. Vital was able to leverage the intimate knowledge he has of the needs of the community he hopes to serve and identify places where these community learning groups could be held and instructors in the community that would be interested in leading them. Second, the Council should increase their support for TEBS so that they may revive the Computer for You initiative. This initiative received $24 million in federal and state funding. However, all of it was subsequently canceled by the Trump administration in May. As a result, no computer has been handed out since August of 2024. Geographic accessibility is not an issue when residents from anywhere in the county, regardless of income status, could access classes online. Finally, the Council should increase their support for McHale so that they are able to more widely advertise instructor positions and offer higher wages. McHale offers ample professional development and training for individuals who hope to become instructors. However, they struggle to recruit them. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. My name is Sahir Qureshi. I'm a graduate student at Stanford University, and I'll be talking about my research into condo fees and their effect on MPDU homeownership in the county, which, as you all know, is our county's inclusionary zoning program. I wanted to start with the fact that there are structural issues in MPDU high-rise condo provision specifically. This is because developers often project that condo fees will be too high to provide these units affordably. As you can see in the graphic to the right, this is because condo fees are usually much more expensive than comparable HOA fees due to higher amounts of shared amenities and services, and due to condos often being luxury developments. And fees are not taken into account when determining MPDU for sale maximum prices. So the addition to the mortgage payment of the fee causes the MPDU unit to be above the affordability threshold. In these cases, developers have the option to either provide MPDU condo units offsite or pay a fee in a process known as alternative agreements with DHCA. It's important to note that all 12 DHCA tracked alternative MPDU condo agreements cited high condo fees as the reason that developers couldn't provide high-rise condo MPDUs on site. Now, the county in the past has prioritized affordable housing production generally over location or housing type in the county. For example, in the last MPDU amendment bill in 3417 in 2018, it stated the public benefit of affordable housing throughout the county outweighs the value of locating MPDUs in each subdivision throughout the county. But the county might have reason to reconsider this. This is because high-rise condos have clear benefits to the county. Most importantly, they offer the most affordable MPDU for sale prices derived from cheaper high-rise condo market rate prices. In 2024, the average sale price for a market rate condo was $380,000, and the median price was around $330,000. So these MPDUs are able to be subsidized easier. They also lead to mixed income communities, which is a priority for the county, as allowing MPDU condos to be in the same development as families of all income levels leads to this kind of development. High-rise condos also allow low-income families to have greater access to transit and to be closer to job centers, which leads to a more secure home price appreciation, allowing low-income families to benefit from the fruits of homeownership since amenities are nearby. So to understand whether the county was benefiting from this kind of development, I asked, are MPDU high-rise condos being created? And two sub-questions. Where are for sale MPDU units generally located in the county? What housing types are typical of these units? I found that MPDU for sale development is primarily concentrated up county and is primarily townhome development. Clarksburg leads by far in MPDU for sale condo development, and Down County has produced relatively few MPDU for sale units. Of most importance here is that out of the 389 for sale MPDUs produced in the last 5 years, none were high-rise condo units, meaning that the county has really not benefited from all the benefits of this kind of development. If the county wants to incentivize this kind of development, I have two recommendations. The first is a tax credit for MPDU high-rise condo owners. This would allow for the offsetting of individual unit fees for MPDU high-rise condos, and for developers to qualify for an alternative agreement, they must show that even including this tax credit, condo fees are still too high to reach the MPDU affordability threshold. The second recommendation is providing a potential workforce housing alternative for developers who are building this kind of development. Developers could provide additional workforce housing units instead of MPDUs in their development, providing more runway for high condo fee prices to stay under the higher affordability threshold that workforce housing allows. This may increase the use of the relatively underutilized workforce housing program. These recommendations are gone into more detail in my report. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would say you all did such a great job too, condensing very complex topics and sticking to the presentation time and to, I'm really looking forward to digging into each of your reports more thoroughly, because I think there's just the analysis you've been able to do and your recommendations are really just excellent at this time, and a lot of food for thought for us as we're thinking about our MPDU program, as we're thinking about how do we set up English language classes and support our residents, floating zones, and I love the tool library. So I think we still have one in Tacoma Park too, but it's a municipal one. But I think it adds a great deal to our residents' lives. I will turn it over now to Councilmember Malcolm.
Thank you. They were so great. Both panels were really great, and we could spend hours on each one alone. So 2 very quick questions. One on the high-rise condos. When you looked at the cost of the development, how did you incorporate the cost of land near transit?
Right. So for condo prices, because it's not fee simple ownership, condo ownership doesn't involve the price of land. So that's part of the reason that the cost is lower for condos. Does that?
It does, but when you look at the map, map makes sense because of the cost of the land, right? So when a project is developed, the cost of the land could be often more than the cost of the actual development. And so I think that when we look at because I think you're absolutely right in terms of how to get more units, for sale units versus rental units. Looking at condos is a good way to go. But it's just how do you do that near transit when the cost of the land is so important. So I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you. And then the other thing is the English learners, language learners. One of the things that we talk about all the time is how do we notify our residents? How do we communicate, market to our residents in different languages, which very often we do a good job of that, but how do we reach the people that we don't reach? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've looked at that when you were looking at services needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, on my first recommendation with the outreach committee, I think that speaks to the importance of including the advisory group leaders. These are the people who are most intimately familiar with the needs of these specific communities and are able to actually communicate with them and speak to things that they experience on a daily basis. Additionally, I get into more specificity about this in my report, but for my third recommendation on advertising these instructor positions, I advocate for specifically advertising them on radio stations and publications that broadcast in different languages and speak to these specific communities that do not speak English. So it's definitely a concern, and it's definitely something that Mikhail is conscious of, but I think that strategic partnership with these advisory groups and targeted advertisement could help a lot here.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Mink?
Thank you. Thank you for all these presentations. As has been said, each of these is excellent, and I'm really looking forward to diving into the reports in depth for each of them. I wanted to really appreciate the information about the inequities of where our ESOL classes are available. Mm-hmm. This is definitely something that I have seen firsthand as the representative for the east side of the county. We have lots and lots of residents who would like to be taking classes, specifically who would like to be taking these classes and have trouble accessing that. And I know that Mikhail has really been working on strategies, as you highlighted, to try to outreach to these communities and to try to make those services available. But it's really tough. It's really tough, with budget constraints. It's tough strategically. And I'm really glad that you highlighted the amazing work that Rodrigue has done with the community as well, because I think that is a great case in point when you have somebody who is so closely tied to a community and to our target audience here, how effective that can be, especially when we have county services, like being able to provide laptops that are available to fill those gaps and make those pieces doable. And I think this really highlights the need for us to be strategic in how we're funding these initiatives in a really targeted way to make sure that we are reaching the folks who most need it and who most lack that equitable access. And it also highlights some real workforce possibilities as well, which is also very much needed. A question about the tool libraries. As we look at, and actually I have some friends who work and have worked at the Station North Tool Library. Mm-hmm. But did you see ways of balancing the desire to obviously be able to provide this as a free service to residents, i.e. the library aspect of this, but also a way to monetize it? Is there a balance out there, and can you talk a little bit about what you've seen?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, Station North Tool Library was definitely a really big inspiration for my research project, just because they do a lot of great additional programming. Definitely that is something that these programs have struggled with, but a lot have been able to find a balance. So one option that I know Greenbelt, they also have a tool library that they use, is they sort of use a sliding scale or pay what you can sort of option. So for a sliding scale, one option is to do $1 for every 1,000 that you make for your annual income. So this is able to meet people where they are. Additionally, Rockville Science Center, the tool library there, they have a annual membership fee, but they are able to discuss with individual people based on their needs for reduced sort of annual membership options. And then finally, I think Station North does this as well, but a lot of other programs offer scholarships and reduced fees for individuals who need it. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I yield.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for those terrific presentations and for spending your summer with us. I hope you all found it as rewarding as we have found it to receive your presentations, and I'm sure each of the departments where you were also very much enjoyed having you. I do want to thank our staff, Mr. Anbinder, Ms. Dunn, Mr. Mia, and Ms. Rodriguez-Hernandez for helping shepherd these projects through this summer. And again, please, I know you'll be around for a little while longer, even though today is our last official meeting for the summer, and we hope that you will interact and with the council members, and we get to learn more about the work that you're doing, not just here in the county government, but your studies and other things. So we wish you all well, and thank you very much for your work. Next for council's consideration is the consent calendar. I will entertain a motion to approve consent calendar. Councilmember Balcom moved. Council Vice President Juando seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous of those present and virtual. All right, that's the consent calendar. The next item on the agenda is proposed closed session. The council intends to meet in a closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice pursuant to Maryland Code General Provisions Article Section 3-305B7, consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation pursuant to Maryland Code General Provisions Article 3-305B8, and discuss public security if the public body determines that public discussion would constitute a risk to the public or to public security, including the deployment of fire and police services and staff, and the development and implementation of emergency plans pursuant to Maryland Code General Provisions Article 3-305B10. Topics are legal advice related to county contract, including a party's performance under the contract, remedies under the contract, and potential litigation related to the contract, and the public safety resources and deployment. Is there a motion to meet in closed session?
So moved.
Council Member Lukey moved. Council Vice President Juando seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous of those present and online. We will now move into the closed session on the third floor at Council Conference Room, and we will return here at 1:30 to continue the open session. Thank you very much.